All right, well, welcome everybody to the Great Balance Debate is what I've decided to call it today, because I think that might be our prime topic of discussion. I have with me the usual gang plus Avril, as we just discussed here, who's arrived with flats in the background. How you doing, Avril?
I'm good. I gotta put flats the right way around though. I think my image is flipped in Discord for whatever reason, so I'll get that fixed. It's all good.
Well, let me just quickly
in the right direction soon.
Let me quickly finish the introduction that need no introductions. In the bottom right is my man Samito. Samito, what up?
Good night / evening / lots of time zones here. So whatever time of day it is, I hope it's a good one.
Wherever you're coming from. And of course, in the top left, already telling me he's a bit annoyed with Overwatch, already preheated in the oven, is Flats. Flats, how you doing?
Preheated. Holy shit. You already said how I'm feeling, so you're good.
Okay, guys. Well, we're going to get right into it. We're going to discuss the balance patch recently, just the feel of Overwatch as well. We've got lots to discuss, some Ramatra news, Junkrat nerfs, and yeah, lots. We'll hear from Avril as well about his experiences in the AL Grand Finals and what it's been like for him on the pro side. But before we go any deep, I'd like to just get an introductory feel to how you guys are feeling about Overwatch 2 right now. So, scale of 1 to 10, guys. 1 being could not be less happy. 10 being could not be more happy. How are we feeling about Overwatch 2? Let's just get a little feeler. Flats, start with you.
I mean, overall, like an 8, maybe. Like, I mean, like, to be fair, we played through, like, 3 years of 0 for... So, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's fair because I'm personally happy. It's way better than it was. But it's like, there's so many things that are wrong or that are fucked or could be a million times better. It's just like, I look back and I'm like, I'm glad we're not there anymore. But it's a real shame that we're not much further along, I guess. So I'd say about an 8.
I feel you. I feel you. One thing I forgot to mention we'll discuss as well is the enabled crossplay aim assist, which I know my friend Samito has a lot of thoughts on. Sam, 1 to 10, first and foremost, how are you feeling?
Honestly, I would say I think an 8 is a very good. I think an 8's a great spot to put it. The main reasons I wouldn't put it at 9 or 10 is just because I feel like there's a lot of heroes that still have not had the chance to be adjusted accordingly to 5v5, the new tempo of the game. I saw ML's opinion on support about that, kind of talking about that. It's not just a support problem. I think actually there's more damage heroes in the game. I guess if you could take just from volume alone, there's so many heroes in that role. It's for only 2 spots. It's going to be really competitive to see who gets picked, right? But in general, I'm able to log on, play all 3 roles, and really enjoy myself. The only problem I have with tank is like the queues sometimes get kind of long, and that's frustrating. But it's so weird how that 180 came out of nowhere. But I think overall the game's in a pretty good spot. I think the big concern that people have right now, I think the best way to put it is that it could swing up. It could very easily swing up from an 8, and it could very easily swing down from an 8. And how the next couple weeks go are really going to determine whether it's that up or downward trend. But I would say overall, season 1 definitely has been a success for the team, and I think that like collectively you should be happy with it. But if you're always hungry and you always want to do better, especially in how competitive this industry is, you can never be satisfied. So I would say about an 8 right now.
Good summary. I like it a lot, and lots to pack into. But Avril, first and foremost, how are you feeling 1 to 10?
It depends on how much you like skins. If you only have skins, it might be like a 1 or 2. I don't know. Apparently, I don't really care. So I guess maybe for me it's 11. No, I think a hovering 7 to 9 range, or 7 to 8 range feels about right. Anything that I have a problem with, even if you do have problems with skins, by the way, I think it's all fixable. I think everything that I see with the game right now, I'm like, well, I can see this being improved by a lot within 6 months to a year, whatever it is. Whereas in Overwatch 1, I felt like there were issues that you couldn't really change unless you were doing some big overhaul. Like you'd have to do like a 5v5, you'd have to get rid of a tank, or you'd have to do X or Y or Z things, and there were more, I guess, problems that are deeper in the game. This time around, I think the base game is good. Like the base gameplay experience is good. Even the people that have problems with the monetization, almost all of them are like, yeah, but at least the game is good. I'm having fun playing the game. I just wish I got more free stuff. So I think that means from a gameplay perspective, we've kind of we landed in the right place, and we just got to tweak certain things. Maybe people aren't too happy with certain balance changes or patch notes, but again, that's all fixable as well. So like, there's nothing that really screams, alarms anywhere for me. So I'm pretty happy with it. I don't know. I'll give it a 7 just to be different. I don't know.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's hard for me because actually, like, you got to let these guys have done a very good job. Flats, fresh out from a bad rank session, is still able to give it an 8. So I applaud his objectivity, because I would be like at 9, 10 level, because I think like normally, because I'm like, of course the game has flaws, of course there's ways it can improve, but it's never going to not be the case, right? There's always going to be something that can improve, always going to be some balance complaint that we have, always some bug or something, some problem. But for me, I would also probably land on 8. For me, the biggest problem is the matchmaker. I've really just been really unhappy with how the games have been. It's so tragic, because it feels like the gameplay is great and the games are so miserable. And we'll get into all that in a minute. But first and foremost, let's discuss the hottest news, the recent patch notes. So I'm going to pull it up on my end, and what I'll do is I'll ask you guys to go through each hero's changes and just kind of chime in if you got any strong opinions. And I know we've got some on some of these, but if not, we'll just quickly go through them. So first and foremost, D.Va, her fusion cannon spread increased slightly, her booster impact damage reduced, and the call mech ultimate cost is reduced by 12%, but this was already fixed in the last update. So fellas, any strong opinions on this D.Va change?
I actually
remove D.Va from pro meta.
Say how much? It what?
It's removed D.Va from pro meta. The fun thing about all these patches, guys, is that Al's already been on this patch for quite a while. I mean, we look at this. I like the part where publicly everyone's like reacting to the patch notes, even though I think this was public like a long ass time ago, and everyone's like, I can't believe they didn't nerf Sojourn. Like, we knew they weren't going to nerf Sojourn. We knew that like a month ago. Like, what's going on, guys? This has been public knowledge for a while. Anyway, but yeah, we've played on this patch for a while already, and D.Va's basically, the play rate's gone way down, almost 0.
Probably because we were supposed to play it 2.5 weeks ago and we didn't. So
that's fair. That's fair.
True. Also, I think Sam, you'd copiumed yourself into believing that the delay might mean that Sojourn would get nerfed, right?
Yeah.
This guy coped hard. This guy coped hard.
No shot. You actually coped like that.
How long you played this game for?
Dude,
my man didn't learn.
Sam, I'm disappointed in you.
I'm disappointed in the universe, dude. Myself a part
Look,
of it.
He's been playing
It's
Overwatch 1 for 6 years. He's had to learn coping mechanisms, okay? Like, and this is one of them.
Just, man. I will say though, back to D.Va, because trust me, I'll get to Sojourn at some point in this conversation. But I will say, like, D.Va was definitely like way too good at like just 1v1ing. Like, I at the start of this season, like, I would just pick D.Va and just nuke somebody. Like, you flew on a squishy, like, especially the DPS or support heroes. And I think this is where a lot of people's complaints come from, of that, like, a lot of these heroes have not really been adapted to 5v5 yet. Like, you just truck them. Like, it's like, have you ever seen the clip? I think it was a Patriots player, Flats, of the lineman who like caught the ball or intercepted it and just ran it straight down. He's like running over like the court of the receivers or whatever. And it's just, you can't stop him. That's what it felt like as D.Va. You just run him over and they couldn't do anything to you in the one-on-one, especially if you'd use DM right. So I think that was a really good change.
AVRL crying in Oceanic. I'm crying in European. As these NFL references just come through, like, yep, sure, nod.
I convert it to rugby, like, there's some guy just running through all the way, can get tackled down. But it's like, I hear it. Like, D.Va, to me, just had so much burst damage as well. She was hard to kill. I mean, defensive matrix super strong. She got her armor back, right? Like, she originally had this nerf, which removed some armor, then she got it back. And then on top of that, she had the booster impact damage and all the rest. You can see it there. It just made her like super tanky, and she could. We had this D.Va double flex support meta going on now, and she had insane durability to also peel for her backline to let you get away with greedy support lines like double flex support, and then she could just fly on somebody and instant delete a 200 HP target like no problem. So definitely a lot stronger than she needed to be, which is why her damage being nerfed is a good call.
The interesting thing about it as well, and I think we'll discuss this as we get to Zarya as well, is that one of the things that is clearly emerging in the tank meta, especially I think in solo queue, is this tank strong because they're strong, or are they strong because they shut down that other guy who's potentially strong? And I think obviously D.Va's strength in pounding through Winston right now, I mean, kind of remains with this. But people saying Winston's going to be very strong. So before we move on to Zarya, do you guys have any thoughts on like the Winston or just the tank meta? I know, Sam, I'll take it to you first. Actually, I'll read the Zarya notes and then you comment on it. So I'm going to, because that's the last tank change. So the projectile barrier, duration reduced 2.5 to 2 seconds with the particle barrier. Cooldown increased 10 to 11. It's basically the same for both. So yeah, go ahead. Talk me through what you think of the tank meta with or after this patch.
So I think the one thing, real quick on Zarya, I think the reason why she ended up being as strong as she was when you change her bubble usage to be able to be on herself like twice, that disrupted the rhythm of the character. So I actually don't think it was the big thing was the increase in like the bubble duration. I think that helped, but the big thing was like the fact that you could actually self bubble twice because you forced herself. She wasn't able to use it for another like 8 seconds. She was like forced to bubble her team, but with that extra option, it just let her get a lot more playtime. Tank meta, in ranked, I think Hog is going to dominate. I think with Ana's nade nerfs and sleep nerfs and the buffs that Hog got, and just how easy it is to decimate a lobby on Roadhog, I think that he is going to be one of the strongest picks in Season 2. I think good Winston players can absolutely get value, but the problem is, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, and we'll talk a little bit about the matchmaker later because I've got my final theory on why some of these games are as crazy and lopsided as they sometimes appear to be. But, you know, I think a pixel perfect Winston will still be able to get a lot of value. But at the same time, you know, the picks that end up dominating the meta are the picks that are the most consistent. And we talked about this so much. The best things in Overwatch have always been the consistent pick. That's why you saw GOATs get played so much. The most consistent comp is the one that is usually played. And I think it's so much easier to get consistent value on Roadhog in the style of game where the most valuable thing you can do in this game is get picks. The proactive heroes are the best heroes. That's why across each role, the heroes that don't have the ability to be as proactive, and I think that's one reason you see a lot less D.Va, like what made her so good in Overwatch 1, and even in this game, like, you know, she could fly in and burst somebody, sure, but, you know, she was at her best at, like, kind of catching things. She's like a net, right? Sometimes a good D.Vas can go in really aggressive, but when you're up against Hog, I had somebody tell me, well, D.Va's going to counter Hog. I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, you know, because Hog can instantly get the pick, he can hit the hook, and he can do a lot of damage, and that is just such a valuable thing to do in this game, especially when there's almost no CC or, like, really high burst damage aside from Bastion to stop you, who is also kind of bad because of his ult, but his sentry form is very good. So I think Hog is going to... I actually think Hog's going to be better than Winston this patch. I think at least in ranked, where people like the Winston players have to do so much more correctly to maybe get the reward for a Hog to lob a hook, get the shot. Oh, I'm out of position later. Like, you're not killing me. You're just not. So I don't really see any big options to Hog on a lot of maps aside from Sigma on the very linear maps. Sigma, I think, is a very, very slept-on pick, and his time to shine is going to come because he is really, really, really strong. It's just like he's just got to be in the right situation to get value. So I think Hog, Sig, Winston, maybe some Zarya from certain players. I think Ball still can't. It's very rock, paper, scissors. Ball and Orisa are in the same boat. We're like, oh, well, you can't kill them. They're good. But, like, anyone with the brain is just going to ignore them and go kill the team. And that's why you don't see much Orisa being played. Unless you get, like, Orisa May, who's welcome back, by the way. Welcome back to May. We missed you, right? New hero, right?
Did we?
Yes. You know, yeah. Did we? Hey, no freeze anymore. I like playing May. May is fun. And I know Flats likes it, too, because he gets to play Ryan, right? Am I wrong? How much easier to play Ryan with a May on your team? A good May, when there's not a May on the other team.
It's not even fair at that point. It's not
but then if they have a May and then you get walled, you get fucked too. So it's
exactly.
So
yeah,
it's a double edge.
I'm curious if May could potentially slow down Hog. I don't think so though. So yeah, I think the big picks are going to be Winston.
I had a 17
Hog.
and 15 May against a Hog yesterday. No.
Really? Yeah, no, it's not. You can't do anything. Yeah, I think I'm really scared about Hog being good because if I'm sorry, if Hog is meta, the game is not fun. It's just not. It's Hog needs to be an niche pick, and if Hog is ever meta in the game, name one Hog meta that was fun, that like people were like consistently look back as like this was enjoyable.
None of it was fun, but like Overwatch 1 was dominated by Hog, was it not?
Yeah, towards the end, after he got his last couple buffs, it was just like, you know,
the interesting thing about the Hog domination.
Everyone keeps saying, I want to play Overwatch 1 again. Well, here you go, you can play Hog.
True. The interesting thing about the hog domination though, that felt, especially towards the end of Overwatch 1, felt like a desire to not pick tanks more than an explicit desire to pick hog. If you get what I'm saying, it was like priority pass, DPS wanting to just get their fill, go tank, lock hog, flank, play DPS basically. Whereas now it feels like even as a tank player, you might just have to play hog because he just shits on people. Flats, is that something you feel?
I won a game the other day with Seagull where I literally had like 12k healing, 3k damage on hog. I stood on the cart and looked down for 4 minutes and I won. You couldn't kill me. Couldn't hit a hook. I had like 12%. Didn't matter. They sat about halfway across the map just shooting me. I just looked at the ground the entire time, just kept healing. That's it. What are you going to do? Nothing. There's literally nothing you can do. It's quite possibly one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. I told everybody hog was a little slept on at the beginning of Overwatch 2. It just felt really strong. And I think Hog's one of those characters that the devs really struggle with because I don't think they fundamentally understand that having a one-shot tank character is one of the dumbest things of all time. And the only exception I would maybe give you is Sigma, because you have to hit that slow build-up rock, then the left click. Like, even in Overwatch 1, they understood it wasn't that great, and then they nerfed it, so you then had to hit the melee so it was up close. Like, I actually still don't understand. Like, even Ryan can't one-shot people 250 characters anymore. Like, you can't even one-shot a Reaper if you pin him. Like, how are you going to tell me that Hog can one-shot now anyone at all times, and you can't even have a character that you have to all in for and then pin them against a wall? You have to make it all the way to a fucking wall. Like, fundamentally, I still have zero faith in the balance team at all.
Well, that's a very interesting statement. I would like you to elaborate on that before we kind of feedback any for. What makes you say that right now, Flats?
I don't understand. Like, it's the same philosophy as it seems as Overwatch 1, and we're starting to fall down that hole again. I think beta 1, when it first started, was like the ultimate tank beta. Everyone had fun on tank. It enjoyed it. It was a great time. Like, it was giga buffed. It was insane. But there was things wrong. Like, for example, the armor buff. Like, armor was being calculated incorrectly, so it was 2 times stronger than it was. So all these characters, your Winston, your Ryans, etc., like anything that had a lot of armor got hard nerfed. D.Va too, because they were overperforming. But they were overperforming because of a bug. So they fixed the bug and then kept the nerfs, and they were like, well, whatever. And then these other characters kept getting these small little buffs. So your Zarya, your Hog, all these things kind of were creeping up over time. Then Kiriko comes out, and it's like, oh, now the one thing that shoots him down.
Power creep. Don't say it.
Oh yeah, we don't believe in that around here, apparently. Just like we don't believe in counterpicking. But I would say that Overwatch 2 counterpicking is actually stronger than Overwatch 1's counterpicking was. I've actually, I'm not even joking. I have like there's like me, like 5 or 6 people that I keep going against in ladder. I'm not sure if they're snipers or what, but I swear all they do is sit there and they just keep rotating their characters based on whatever I pick out of spawn. I think today I had a game where I made, I think, 9 swaps throughout the game because it was just constantly following that swap process, either Tracer, Reaper, Hanzo, Sojourn, like whatever it was, it just kept following that circle. But 1, counterpicking is not a thing, and 2, power creep's not real.
I mean, I love a good complaining session. I will say, I believe last time I spoke to Josh, he did say power creep was a real thing. So I think that's something that they've acknowledged. I think that when he was on the podcast, he did say power creep. We did it. Sorry. I hate, don't get me started on the hero swapping. You guys know my bugaboo. I'm still mad about the 30% thing. I think it was dumb as heck. I think it's continued to prove to be dumb as heck. 30% ult charge that you keep whenever you swap heroes.
Sorry, yeah.
Which just
So
makes
you don't want to be in?
No, I didn't want it then. I don't want it now. Because especially
It makes swapping way easier, I won't lie.
Yeah,
Like, I can counterpick so easily.
Clearly. It's like, because earlier it was like if you're 40%, 50% to an ult, you're like, I should stay on this hero. I'm almost there, right? That was the mentality. Now you go down to 30, so like that loss of like 20, 10% doesn't feel so bad. You're like, yeah, I'll just go. That's fine. I'll build that up.
EMP in one fight.
So like I knew it was gonna be dumb at the time, and it's dumb now. And the bigger problem with it is, well, one, obviously you already said your balance philosophy is like, people don't swap. But the other thing is like, it's so easy to counter a tank now, right? And it's like if you counter the tank, you shut down the main front line, the entire front line in many ways, right? It's like if you just pick Reaper and they're running Monkey, it's like, well, fuck me then, right? Like I've had this conversation with Boger many a time where he's just like, I've had it, dude. Like I'm done. Every time I play Monkey, they just pick Winston, they just pick Reaper, Hog, and then I'm fucked. And it's true. Even when I play, it's the same thing. And it's like people said, oh, it's just going to soften the counter switch. No, it's encouraging it. It's the same thing. And it's really frustrating. I think that's something that really needs to be looked at. And I think this is what I was alluding to earlier as well. I've seen, I saw Jake's tier list, for example. And I want your thoughts on this in a sec, AVRL. But I saw Jake's tier list saying that Winston and Hog are S tier. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it's like at pro level. I don't agree with that. Because I think just on the fundamental level that Hog shits on Winston, I don't know if they can be in the same S tier. I think Hog is in the tier above. Just in the pure value of like when you lock them both, Hog comes out on top. I don't know how you feel, AVRL.
Yeah, well, we can talk about the fact that this is to no surprise to anybody, listeners included, but it's like the pro meta and the ranked meta is going to be very different because the levels of coordination, the levels of optimization, team comps, and everything in team play is just on a different level. Winston is, if anyone paid attention to Overwatch League playoffs and finals, Winston dominated meta, and we were on this patch. This is the patch we were playing on. So we're talking about Hog being good, but barely anyone played Hog. It was like almost 100% pick rate for Winston. Into Reaper, by the way, fully into Reaper. Even now, I think out of our, we're into the next contenders phase. So in the pro level, we're still seeing mostly Winston, and I would describe Hog as an off meta pick, like a slightly off meta pick. It's if you're not playing Winston, you're playing slightly off meta, and Hog is the next hero after that. We're seeing some teams kind of go for a counter to Hog with Orisa, and then usually you might go back to Winston after that or something like that. Winston requires a lot more team coordination to succeed, I feel, and that's something I feel on all levels. So yeah, Winston probably gets punished way more in ranked because the team behind you isn't going to be able to support you the way you need, whereas a Hog, as we know from the entire history of Overwatch, is far more self-sustainable character that doesn't need an insanely good team behind it. You don't need a crazy team behind you to enable you. You can sort of get a lot of work done on your own on Hog. So that's why Hog would, in ranked play and solo play, especially towards the end of Overwatch 1, start dominating. Or I don't know about dominating, but definitely be like a favorable pick. And now it's seemingly going that way again because, you can punish a Winston pretty easily, and we're talking about the swapping here, the countering stuff here as well. But it's like, I agree that on an individual level, it's like, oh, if I go Winston and they go Reaper or Hog, I'm having a bad time. But the way the game is meant to be played, quotation marks, is that your whole team is meant to be looking for swaps to support. So it's like, at the pro level, are they going to go Reaper, Hog? Yeah, but you can stay on Winston because the rest of your team is still building a team composition that makes sense for the Winston survivability. You're still playing Lucio Carrico. I think that's the most important part about the pro meta is the Lucio Carrico part of it. Everything else changes. The thing that almost never changes is those two supports. They're really strong together, and then like Carrico just has like mad ability to keep Winston alive and all sorts of things. And the Kitsune Rush as well is so good with Winston. That's the other thing, is it's like the pro meta is very dependent on that particular ultimate and which heroes work well in that ultimate. So Reaper works great in that ultimate, Winston works great in that ultimate. Hog, not so much outside of the ultimate. So it's like Hog is surprisingly not amazing in that ultimate compared to some other heroes. I think that's the main difference here. And so I see a humongous difference in terms of like where the opinion is from the pro level to the rest of it, just because I think the difference of the rest of the team, what your supports and your DPS are doing, factors into that a lot.
Yeah. 100%.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah,
too?
go Sam.
I think as well, the ranked meta is so different because the level of Kiriko play is so much more coin flip as to who you get on Kiriko. Because I won't lie, you either have a fantastic Kiriko or a really bad Kiriko, and there's not much in between, right? So I think that couldn't have been said better, and it's just very scary thoughts of. I actually do think in ranked, I've seen these Hogs getting Kiriko ult with their ult, and just like the amount of damage that puts out is insane. Like maybe a couple thousand damage in like 2 seconds if you hit like point blank. Like in ranked, like the Winston players and what the pros do so well, this is why Winston's so good. The pros are so good at not taking damage. Have you seen Winston's, especially like the ones that get pulled up? They're like 3.3K in Overwatch 1, and they're in the Masters game against the Hog, Sojourn, and they're having to bubble before the fight. I'm like, dude, like, stop taking damage. He's like, I can't. I'm like, yeah, hide behind the wall, right? That's literally what you have to do, and that's, again, the margin for error on Winston is so much smaller, but once you have maximized that potential on Winston, which is why it's so good in pro play, then you can really get the value. That's an enormous difference, but no one in ranked. Very few Winston players in ranked are going to be able to do that.
Well, Well, you're also like kind of having to play a dive composition there, which requires, I think, a lot of coordination of understanding when you're supposed to go, how you're supposed to hide and rotate. It's not just about hiding and not taking damage, but like how are you rotating the map such that you can get like the shortest distance between the dive. Maybe you don't even have to use your jump. That would be huge. And one thing we didn't talk about is how good the Sojin players are at the pro level. Because here's the other reason why Hog gets ruined. It's like I watch these games, and you watch people lock in Hog, and these Hog players are getting annihilated by the Sojin. There's no shield. They got no cover. They're like, you show up, you're like this big dude on the battlefield, and the Sojin players farming rails off you, pumping you with rail headshots. And I look at these Hog POVs at the pro level, and they're getting destroyed because these top level Sojins have no mercy against these guys. It's like these Sojins just get a free game. If you go Hog, these Sojins are laughing. Is the other reason.
And Flats, is that something you've kind of, what's your encounter been so far with like the Hog, Sojourn, Winston, everything we kind of spoke about really?
Super sensible take. Like, the biggest thing about it is, especially in ranked, your coin flips basically on 4 different factors. Your coordination, you're getting people in voice versus not voice. Or do they feel like swapping? Like, do you get the Moira one trick? Do you get the Lucio one trick? Do you have the Kirka one trick? Do you have the Hog one trick? There's another coin flip of who do you have on your team? Third up, you have the coin flip of, how good are the players on your team? Like, do you have like little Timmy versus Dante, or do you have Dante versus little Timmy? Like, which one is it? Like, which one did you end up on? And I would say the last one is the consistency pick, where it's like, hey, I play Winston. I'm pretty decent Winston. I'm not the best, but like I'm pretty good at it. But they can just pick Hog, stand there, and just not fucking move. It's like I have to be pretty precise with call outs, jumping in, bubbling certain people off, hoping that there's follow-up, having the correct picks to have the follow-up. Did they follow the call? Are they going on their own target? But they just pick Hog. They can just stand there. They don't have to be in voice. They can just do whatever they want. And that level of coordination ends up being, so it's like less consistent to get that in a ranked environment, but you won't have that in a pro environment. So like, I understand both of them being ranked really, really high, because in that pro environment, you don't got to worry about that. Like, you're going to have those people that are all in and committed, but in your average rank game, you might hit tab and you'll see that 2 people are in voice, and you're like, well, if I run Winston here and I jump their backline and it's a perfect engage and I bubble off like the sleep dart or whatever it is, do they just turn and burn me and like have no follow up and I'm not going to kill them in time because they have enough cooldowns to survive, and Hog does enough damage that I'm not going to be able to live a full bubble rotation. It won't happen. Like, we have to go in and kill them, and it's all in. And I actually spent most of my day today explaining to people in ranked that if we're going to play Winston comp, you have to all in it. You can't sit there. You sit in the back line and wait, you're going to get fucked. Like, I either get fucked or you get fucked. And if it's me, then it looks like it's my fault. But if it's you, then you're just mad. And it's like, at that point, it's like, we're both going to lose. So let's all in together, play together as a team, and we win. And ranked, especially ever since Overwatch 1, and this has actually been a big theory of mine for a long time, is the double shield meta after GOATs really created this meta where not talking in ranked and not playing as a team is the new norm. The amount of times that they just half the time people don't play in voice, they don't talk, they don't want to come, they don't want to work together. Just you're there to play your games and you're get in, get out. And the solo queue mentality, and I think that died a lot when we removed stacking from the game, is that team play is not always going to be there, and that ranked will never have that same level of team play that your upper level Overwatch League and contenders and stuff like people watch and look towards. Like, that's the top level play. Even highest level ladder will never come even close to it. When I think maybe years ago it might have been a little bit closer, not in terms of like coordination and play, but at least like an attempt at it. And I would say my games way more nowadays are just me talking to myself, and that's why I used to love playing with Emong so much, because Memong and me would be the only 2 people that talked all game. Nobody would say a fucking word, and now it's just me talking in my games most of the time. And I'll tell you what, I win probably 80 or 90% of those games where everyone's in voice, everyone kind of talking, doing whatever. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's like everyone's giving an effort, and that's why I think Hog is gonna be able to dominate, because if you don't have people that are working together and people that are like, hey, like, let's get on this character, nobody sits there and puts a word, Hog dominates in an uncoordinated team comp.
And that's what we have in ladder. I mean, I don't think we will, at least without radical systemic changes, that's never going to change. I don't think. Like you said, I don't want to keep dredging up the stacking issue, because we've kind of gone over it many times. But if you can't stack, you can't coordinate the way that no one can dream of coordinating like an OWL team can, but even somewhere resembling that, right? That's not going to happen. And I think in that environment, these characters will always rise to the top if they're even equally like even if it's like, let's say even if played perfectly, Winston is 55 and Hog is 45. In solo queue, that means Hog wins every time, right? A Hog pick wins every time. Sam, I mean, what do you see? Is there a solution to this? Let's just drop the stacking thing. Is it always going to be this way? And if so, do you continue to balance in a way that, AVRL is saying, well, the pro's still running Winston because when the coordinating setting, that's fine. You said when Hog is meta, nobody has fun. I agree, 100%. Fuck that guy. So what do we do? Do we say, fine, well, it's still meta for the pro level, then it's fine? Or do we say, well, no, it's nightmarish in solo queue, the Hog is running rampant. We got to do something.
It's
you gotta
tough.
do something.
It's tough. I think that regardless of what's being run in the pro meta, you have to look at how the hero interacts with the game.
Agreed.
And I think that let's follow precedent a bit here, okay? Doomfist had major changes to him to be changed into a tank. One of that is his damage was gutted, right? I just finally finished my Doom grind in top 50, and oh my god, that was miserable, right? And the big reason that Doom got a lot of the changes that he got is like, okay, well, a tank shouldn't be able to one shot because that's just a frustrating mechanic. So obviously you got the compensation for the mobility. I just think that the way Hog plays is really corny. Like, I was dealing with Beaver, and like whenever these guys would just swap anti-Doom comp, I just pick Hog and just run through the lobby. And to be honest, it's just too easy. Like, compared to the rest of the role, it's too easy for him to be doing what he's doing. And I just don't think I think regardless of how effective it is, I just don't think that it's healthy for the game. I'm not saying they should gut the hero, but I do think that they should look to change it because it doesn't it just feels corny. That's the best way I can describe it. Like, the stuff that I'm doing on the character just feels corny. Like, you can reduce his damage, but also like cut the Hog hook cooldown in half, but reduce the damage a ton so that it's like more about uptime and being consistent rather than, I think it's so good because burst impact is so important in this game. Picks are like the name of the game in Overwatch 2, and every 8 seconds, Hog has a chance to insta-win a fight. Or maybe not insta-win, but get dang close. And I don't think that all or nothing kind of play style is very healthy for the game, especially given the degree. Like, I don't care what people say. Listen, you can say what you want about a lot of different people's opinions on different characters. I'm GM1 on pretty much every hero in this game aside from Wrecking Ball and Mercy, right? Those are just my 2 ones I just have not done. But so I would say, to be fair, I have a pretty good feel for what is fair and what isn't. And I think that, like, the level of ease it is for me to pick up Roadhog and run through a lobby, I don't really feel that any other character can do that at the degree of difficulty that Hog is. I'm not saying that Hog doesn't take skill. Hog does take skill. But the stuff that you can get away with is just straight up stupid. And I see so many times where I'm like, dude, if that's a Winston that did what he just did, or if that's a Zarya, or if that's a D.Va, or if that's even a Wrecking Ball, or a Doomfist who has insane mobility, they don't get away with that. But Hog is able to get away with literal murder. Like, this man would be a menace in Clue. Like, no one would ever be able to get the Hog, right? Like, you just can't. So, to me, it's not really about, because we talked about this risk to reward SVB a lot in Overwatch 1, and we felt like, we didn't feel like we knew that the game's fair play was broken in the hero design, and that heroes like Brigitte, bingo card, heroes like Sigma, Orisa, the double shield, it was like, okay, you're getting rewarded, but what are you actually doing to get that reward? And it didn't seem like it was fair, and it definitely wasn't healthy for the game. So I think regardless of performance, I think there's definitely a better way than go about Hog. We're talking about balance philosophy. I think it's, you guys, my take on balancing for low-level play. It's not possible. The margin for error is so high, you can almost pick anything. So any change that you make, it's very hard to actually see it come into effect unless there's something that's ridiculously out of tune, in which case you will see that. But, it is definitely a tough one to do with Hog. But if you're going to base it off precedent and look at what happened to Doomfist when he got transitioned, I don't see how you can change Doom the way that you did and allow Hog to be what he is right now. Because it's just like, okay, well, this is the same thing, but arguably worse, because at least you could do things to Doomfist to kill him and punish him, right? But Flats has got 12% hook accuracy, vaping on the point and winning. And you should hear Johnny raging about how he can't play ball because the Hogs get to do whatever they want. And he's like, I just want to play ball. I'm like, Johnny, you can't always play ball, buddy. Like, he's like, when they took me out of the game, I can't play man. Bastion sucks, so I have to play J-Sil. I'm like, dude, come on, man. Like, it's all right. But no, it's a good point. I think that either way, I'm really scared about Hog and Rank this patch. I think it's just going to stick out like a sore thumb. And I'm not saying you should hammer it down, but, I think there's better answers than what it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the point you made about just the risk and reward, because I think this is something even we were touching last week with Kabaji and ML and Boger when we were talking role debate, and Kabaji in particular talking about Sojourn, and we'll talk about Sojourn in a sec when we talk about, well, let's focus on tanks for now. We'll talk about DPS in a sec, but it feels like the reason they were frustrated, and the way we tried to summarize the frustration with Sojourn is, well, what's the risk you're taking for getting this one shot, right? It's like when a Hanzo, at least when he draws his bow, he slows down, he's easier to hit, he's kind of a less mobile character, right? And his mobility is not as anywhere near the craziness of the slide, right? Widowmaker, again, she's scoped in, she has to stay scoped in for a little bit to charge up her rifle, it narrows her vision, she's a very easy shot. There's a lot of risk to that one shot, right? Reinhardt, I feel for my brother Flats, because I've been trying to lock Ryan. My experience recently, by the way, I gave up playing support, because fuck that role. I've been locking Ryan, Winston, and Sigma. That's my 3 tank tricks. Ryan and Winston is what I want to play. Sigma's what I play when they run Hog. I'm like, fuck you, I'm going to just play Sigma and like rock everything you do and block everything you do, right? Ryan, even his one shot does not one shot most of the things. So it doesn't one shot the Reaper, doesn't one shot any of the tanks. In fact, it's fucking pointless to do it to a tank, because it's like, you pin him, they shrug it off, and then everyone murders you. On top of that, if Junker Queen exists and she shouts anything you pin, you also don't kill that thing, because the shout takes the targets, 200 HP targets, over the threshold of 225. But even that one shot, quote unquote, comes with a ginormous risk, right? Whereas with Hog, okay, well, I missed the hook, so what? I have another one in 8 seconds. And if I'm really under pressure, I run away with the vape, right? So like the risk reward is just not there. What is being asked of you to do is just like be vaguely close to them and then run away if you need to. And I especially think now with Kiriko in play, who can cleanse the Hog, if like, because the only reliable option previously was, well, I'll pick Ana then, and I'll just shit on this guy. Oh no, well now the Kiriko Suzu's him, and like the cooldowns are so long on Ana, it's like if you miss even one, that's it. He runs rampant for like, he gets 2 hooks off in the cycle of your 2 sleep darts, basically. So it's very frustrating. And I don't know what they need to do, AVRL. I don't know if you have any ideas like on this kind of. I was gonna just respond to Samito, but I actually agree. Like in terms of balance, I would prefer the balance to be geared mostly towards like a GM top 500 level, and not even for pros, because you have to remember the pros are in GM top 500 anyway. Like they're all over top 500. So like if you just target that, you catch all the pros and you catch all the top level players, and I think the rest of the rank can sort of just themselves. It'll trickle down hopefully in a pretty nice way. I think Hog is a really interesting topic, because I still feel like Hog loses to coordination, as we've discussed for a while now. Like the level of coordination you get in your ranked games is a total coin flip, and so Hog gets to have a lot more value. He has a noob stomping character. He's just like, he's not even just a noob stomping character, but he's just like a solo queue king, really. I don't know if you can remove the one shot without destroying his identity, but I have very similar conversations about Sojin, and anyone that follows me knows that I'm like pretty against one shots in this game, except for maybe like a Widowmaker, because of the mechanics required to consistently pull that off. Yeah, tank having a one shot is not good design in my opinion, which is why I'm also not a fan of where they're taking the balance of empowered punch for Doomfist. Like, that was the annoying part of Doomfist in Overwatch 1 that needed to go away, and yet, like, I don't know, I feel like every single balance patch we get for Doom, they keep giving him more power to the empowered punch and not the other areas where he suffers in. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, you have pro-level Doom players are like, this is just completely going the wrong direction. And if you try and play Doom at all, the entire Doom strategy is you just bait for power block charge to get an empowered punch, and you just go for one-shots, which is such a ridiculous way to play Doom. And not at all like a tank thing at all. At that point, you're just playing like
fat DPS Doom. I don't know, like going back to what Flight said a little bit earlier, Beta 1 had probably the best balancing for tank that I felt. And that was reflected in the pro meta as well, because we were in Overwatch League Mid-Season Madness, and it was the most diverse meta we've ever had. So many tanks were viable. Doom was super viable as well. You could one-trick Doom, pretty much. I mean, Dante basically did. And then after that, when Junker Queen came out, I feel like since then, since the Beta 2 Junker Queen stuff, we've never had like a super healthy tank meta, or just a extremely healthy meta in general. Because even now, on this current patch that we're discussing, the meta is almost always the same 5 heroes. We're playing just Lucio, Kariko, Reaper, Sojourn, and Winston, with a tiny bit of Hog in the mix. I don't know. I don't feel great about where a decent amount of tanks are in the game. I'm a little surprised that Hog got as popular as he did, but also I guess I'm not that surprised. Kariko definitely helped out Hog a lot, but yeah, one-shots are a problem. I just don't know how you sort of look at Hog and his one-shot without changing his identity. Maybe it's acceptable to increase the spread of his left click further, so when you hook a small target in, just too many pellets miss and you don't get the one shot, but you can still be effective versus tanks. I don't know, that's more effective. But yeah, one shots do suck, and I want less of them in the game.
I want to quickly get another follow up, because I want to head over to Flats as well. He's been nodding. He's like, preach, brother, preach. But do you have any, like, so you felt like balance in Beta 1 was the way. Is there like a general overall thing where you're like, tanks should be tankier, or do you feel like, okay, these are the stable tanks that everyone likes, Reinhardt, Winston. If they're meta, that's fine. If the others are, like, if Hog is meta, fuck that, something's going wrong. Like, what's your, like, in general, do you think like you have like a philosophy in how tanks should be?
I just think tanks should not be like gigantic damage dealers, and that I'm looking at Zarya here as well, which is why I'm glad she got nerfed. I think they should really limit the damage output of tanks in some ways. Definitely remove one-shots. Tanks, to me, need to be space takers. They need to be pressure units on the board. And they need to be essentially what kind of rallies the team behind them. And so tanks that go too far away from that start to get into problematic areas. Like, if Doom gets into like way more of an empowered punch sort of area in terms of balance, you literally just got Overwatch 1 Doom again, but with gigantic HP pool. And then, the Hog one-shots and the way Hog plays just seems like very different to what you'd imagine a tank should be doing, especially in a solo tanking game. I still think good tanks are like, Winston, Ryan, Diva are all fine. Orisa has her place as well. Like, they're all tanks that make sense in a team game like this, and tanks that like play towards too much solo kind of solo mechanics. And I have a problem with Junker Queen in that area as well. She's you got to watch out for that one, because if she gets buffed, that's problematic as well, because to me she's just kind of like a big roadhog in a way. Like, her gameplay is still like the super selfish gameplay, right? Like, I think that type of tank design is problematic for the game.
Flats, do you think, like, because this is a bit of a paradox, right? Or it's like the duality where on the one hand we were like, Overwatch 2, play what you want, do your solo thing. It's a solo game, maybe you can have skill on your own and win on your own. But then it's miserable when these solo tanks are meta, right? Like, what do we do?
I mean, here's the thing though, is like those things you don't get the option anymore of playing the team game. You have to play the solo queue game at that point. Actually, this is the reason I'm nodding so hard, is because I actually felt extremely the same way after Beta 1. Is Beta 1 felt like the most fun I've played yet. And actually, the first balance patch of Beta 1 was the first one I was like, and that was like when the Zen kick got added, and I was like, oh, that's a little interesting. I'm not really sure if that's the right direction we should be going. But everyone, they were knee jerking because the supports were all screaming that they needed something, and realistically they were right, but they weren't right, because the reason support was still strong. The problem with support was that they didn't have anything new. They had no reworks, they had no new characters, nothing. Our tanks got like 2 new reworks, all giga buffs, so they were much more fun. DPS got a new character. They were getting a bunch of changes. Like, they had fun stuff. Support had nothing. Like, that was like the big thing. But the point is, Beta 2, anyone besides Junker Queen didn't feel that fun. And I remember I was talking about it, I was like, I don't know, guys, like, the Queen feels really fun to play, and everyone's saying Queen, yeah, Fog. But what happens when this passes? Everything else feels a little bad. And you make a good point. Is like, well, you want to have the solo experience or the team play experience, like being able to choose. How do you balance that? Well, unfortunately, and this is mostly why I've kind of grown a little bit more cynical to balance recently, is like things like the Twitter sphere that happened of talking about Sojourn. How she underperforms in every rank, Masters and below, but in GM she's insane. So it's like we're kind of getting left behind a little bit just because we're only 2,000 3,000 players of all of GM. And it's like that's just the wrong way to go about it, because we got the same slap in the face that other balance patch that I made a video about, which talked about how Ryan and Diva aren't bad. Oh no, actually no, what was it? It was like Diva's not that good and Zarya's not that good because Ryan has a 53% win rate or something like that. Like some like talk down bullshit. And I was like, wow, this is actually the biggest spit in the face. I honestly don't care that Timmy and Platt has a 53% win rate with Ryan, because they're gonna pick Ryan no matter what. Like that doesn't make sense. That's why you don't balance from the bottom up, you balance from the top down. And in like things like Ryan and Winston, you have to do so many things to make it work right now, when you could just pick these characters that do tons of damage and shred and get so much more value. And I think there's actually an important part to be made. That Zarya experience isn't even fun. It's not, because you can't do anything. What ends up happening when you have this giga charge Zarya is both the Zaryas were full charge and they stood there and they looked at each other, and they have to keep each other in check. They can't let them walk on their teammates. So what ends up happening is each Zarya is full charge, sitting there waiting for one of three things to happen. One, a teammate to get a pick, where your one-shot character one-shot their one-shot character. Two, someone was dumb enough to get a little too close to the Zarya, where like a Lucio comes skating up and the Zarya just like looks up with 100 charge and just deletes him. Or three, which was mostly not happening that much but could happen, is the Zarya got too aggressive trying to make a play and then ends up getting overextended, burning her cooldowns, and then dies. And the other Zarya, for basically standing AFK, becomes rewarded. And I think one of the worst philosophies for tank is when you're not rewarded for making the aggressive first decision. You're rewarded for being the sit there and AFK and wait for something to happen playstyle, because one, it's boring, two, it's not good game design, and three, it doesn't encourage you to be a playmaker and be a good player. It's basically relying on the enemies to make mistakes, and that's not good. You want to be proactive and make plays, not wait for your enemy to make mistakes. Like that's boring. And the same thing happens with Hog meta. The same thing will happen with Zarya meta. Anything of these like sit back tanks, and just do a bunch of damage will always do that. And I know that hypothetically it's hard to say, but I actually think that if Queen gets buffed, right, like it could very much go back towards Queen or even Doomfist. But characters like Ryan and Winston, which require a lot of team synergy, I actually think could use a small buff. I think Ryan needs a small buff to keep up, or you need to nerf Hog. Sigma is going to end up needing one once everyone figures out that he's busted. Zarya, I think, is in a better place now. I think Zarya actually is like going to probably fall off quite a bit. And Diva, I'm not totally sold yet on Diva, but I also think Diva would be the one to keep Winston in check if Winston became meta and became really strong. And you could have that be your counter pick instead of Hog being your counter pick and Diva being your counter pick, etc. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like it's hard to say, but I really don't like the road we're going down right now. I don't like it at all.
Hey guys, SCB here. Just going to quickly interrupt this episode of the Group Up Podcast to say that if you're enjoying this content, then please do consider signing up for my Patreon to support me directly. It's really amazing because it allows me to keep making content like this carefree, regardless of how many views Overwatch does or doesn't get. I know no one likes sellout ads, but chances are if you've listened till this far in, then you're at least somewhat enjoying the content. So please do consider at least leaving a like, subscribe, and a comment underneath the video on YouTube. It really does help. But that's it for me. Now back to the discussion. Sam, I was going to go to you anyways.
Can I add on to the Zarya comment?
Yeah.
So there's one other thing that you're missing on the Zarya engages. Like I play a very hyper aggressive Zarya in rank. Like I'm going in whether you're there or not. I don't care. Like I'm dying getting in there. The best engage tool that I've like started to find with Reaper getting played over Genji is I tell my Reaper, hey buddy, just TP right in that back line. Wraith back.
Oh yeah.
You're bubbled in. you break their hold immediately, and then you just hard aggress. You don't find something. And the best way I kind of describe Overwatch is like push pull and the tides, right? Like when you have cooldowns, it's high tide, you're pushing in. But as obviously high tide can't last forever, so when that tide starts to come back, you also need to come back. So like I like the comparison. I think Zarya's a little different from Hog though, because like at least for me personally, like I play a very hyper aggressive Zarya. Like if there's a Zarya that wants to sit there and idle, I'm out playing him every time. I'm having my team engage instead of me. But again, then that's kind of like, that's not really solo play. So that's kind of like me doing team play. And I guess like I kind of hard calm every ranked game I play like it's Al Finals. So that's a little different for me. Yeah, I have done that. We need to get in the stack soon, SVB, by the way. We haven't played yet this game. I need to hop in with you and Frito. And Nate, if Nate was here, he'd be talking about his Roadhog, man.
Even Nate, I think, agrees that like, I think Nate would say, as for those of you who don't know, Nate's our friend who's, one of the best Hog players I know. I think even he would say like the breather allowing you to move is too much. It's like it just took away the whole thing. That might be a good
change, actually. That might be a good change. Real quick, not to sidetrack. Do you all think that Hog, he got the opportunity to move and vape back in the day? Like maybe some kind of movement penalty when you're vaping? Because I don't know.
See, the thing is, they want to watch you to be this fluid, mobile game, right? It's like, we don't want you to sit at one corner. We want you to go all around the map and all that. So I guess I understand where the moving of the Hog factors into that, but it takes away from the punishment aspect because he just runs away and he's healing while he's running away and he's taking less damage while he's running away. So it's like something has to change.
What if he stands still but he's fortified?
Could be interesting. Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. So we're setting this precedent where like, okay, Doomfist has his block, right? Orisa's like sit down, fortify. Reinhardt's like I'm shielding. From what it looks like with Ramatra, he also has like a sort of blocky kind of thing, right? So it's
praying
like
that hero's meta, by the way, praying that will get.
Well, I'm praying because I've committed to just hard locking him, so I hope he's not dog shit. But it's like this idea we're seeming to say. I think there should be precedent. I think the best way to do this is for there to be precedent with how tanks behave and to like match that. So if the precedent is the tank must sit while he's like to be protective, he must sit for a sec or she must sit for a sec, then it makes sense for like then what AVRL's saying makes sense. Like okay, well he's got to fortify, but he can't run because like why does Hog get to run and reduce damage? Doomfist has to AFK there and get CC'd potentially while he's while he's doing this.
No, he doesn't heal either.
Yeah, he doesn't heal, and Reinhardt has to slowly run away as his resource is being drained, right? Like it's the opposite for what Hog is getting HP. Reinhardt is slowly losing it as he's trying desperately to run away. So I feel like there should be like a precedent. Okay, when tanks are trying to protect themselves, they lose mobility, right? That can be like a thing. But I think if we don't have that, there's always the danger that like one tank steps out and it's like, well, I can do it all, fucker. Like, what are you going to do now? Like, I can run and DPS.
That's why he has effectively not 100% uptime, but like close to it. I think that's probably what makes it so good.
Yeah. I mean, the question I was going to ask is it realistic? Because here's the thing. We're going to have lots of heroes. Well, I say lots of heroes, but we're going to have heroes semi-regularly. I suppose we're in the deepest influx now, right? Like, we had 3 at the start. We had Kiriko season 1, right? And then season 2, we're going to get Ramatra. So next hero, we're not getting till season 4. So from now on, we'll have maybe a little bit more time for new heroes. I think partly the reason why they might have been struggling with this patch, because again, beta 1 patch was great. They probably had, a year to work on that, right? They had a lot of time to be like, let's get this right, guys. Let's get this as good as possible. But then once they start adding stuff, all starts falling apart. They're going to add Ramatra. It might fall apart some more. Is it possible, though, once they get a smaller intake of heroes, that they can start to fix this? I'm going to take it to AVRL, because AVRL, I haven't heard from you in a bit.
So what do you mean by that? Could you explain the question?
So I feel like part of the balancing difficulty is that a lot is changing quickly, right? Especially when you add a new hero. Like Kiriko, could they have known exactly what was going to happen? I doubt it, right? I doubt they predicted exactly what was going to happen. Sam's nodding because I know Sam knew what was coming, but I'm saying, would they have known what was coming? Probably not. So do we give them allowance, say, okay, it was a new hero, stuff changed they didn't account for, but when there's less frequent hero updates, the balance could be better? Like, is it possible for there to be a healthy, diverse tank meta at some point down the line?
We literally had one in beta 1. Like I said again, once we moved away from that, that was the golden.
Well, but again, that was because they had like a year to put that out though, right? Because they were working on that for a long time.
Sometimes I feel like it's complete random chance. Like they just chanced the fact that everything worked. Maybe I should give more credit to them, maybe not. I don't know, but because there's just stuff that even no matter how much internal beta testing you do, you just can't replicate what the mass player base is going to do, or at any level, right? So it's like maybe something feels fine. I'm sure a lot of the times, like something feels fine, like oh yeah, release break felt fine in internal testing, but just once it goes out into the world, suddenly you realize okay, maybe not. You have to think about a philosophy. It's like, what are we okay with? Are we okay with a game where certain picks are just not gonna be good and we accept that? For example, like Torb and Sim, maybe they're just kind of weak and we just accept that. It's like, yeah, okay, well, if that's the case, then just kill Hog, right? He can just die and then no one plays him and then it's whatever. But then you have the problem, like, what if then you get some one tricks, you know, everyone's like, oh no, not the Sim one trick, not this guy, and then kind of ruins your game a little bit because you feel like they're literally on a troll character that can't win. So that's a bit of a problem as well. You also have a lot of mains in this game, and people who want to like attach themselves to a particular hero, and they're not going to be too happy with their hero being just left in the gutter. I don't think we're ever, maybe I'm pessimistic, I don't think we can ever achieve a situation in the game where like every hero is super viable and everyone has good pick rates and good win rates. I just think this game is going to be too hard to balance for that. And not just this game, like any game with heroes or characters, champions, whatever, like you're just not going to achieve an even spread of gameplay between them all.
So you're saying basically some heroes should be dumpster and that's okay, and we prioritize, let's say, the core gameplay experience that we envision.
I'm asking if people would be okay with that, but I think the answer will probably be no, because again, like those characters still exist, and if somebody picks them, then you're going to be in trouble because you know, someone's basically throwing your game at that, right? So what I don't know what the solution could be. It's like,
well, then it's cycle watch. Go ahead.
Maybe you could be okay with the fact that every patch, like certain heroes are stronger, certain heroes are weaker, and then you just sort of everyone has their turn. Everyone has their turn with the buff stick, right? You're like, oh, this patch now Trace is strong, that patch now Genji's strong, and whatever. Maybe that's the only way to do it. Obviously, if Blizzard do that, they'll never like actually say that. That's just how the game will functionally be. I don't know. Balance is hard.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Then it's gonna be cycle watch, where it's just like a cycle of who's meta. Sam, you raised your hand. I want to talk to Flats in a sec as well, but Sam, you raised your hand about
Flats can go first. It's fine.
Flats, I just want to hear from you, dude. Like, how do you feel? Do you feel? I feel like you've got like a more like a these tanks should be better, these tanks should be worse. Am I wrong?
No, I'd say you're pretty right on that. It's hard to say. Like that first beta, Hog was terrible, like awful, right? Like everyone was like, "This character sucks," right? Now hear me out on this. Hog was terrible, and would have been terrible again in beta 2, but Kiriko hadn't come out yet. The concept of a character that shuts down Ana, the hard counter to Hog, like that should be almost enough to make him good, right? Like that, like theoretically, that should be enough. And I think that there's certain characters that if you have certain team comps and stuff like that, it should work. But you know, hard dumpstering characters, it's tough to say. Like, you know, should that be a thing? But like, it already kind of happens. You know, like if you get a sim player on Havana, like you were just GG'd. Like you were just like, well, go next. Like this ain't happening. Even though the character's like viable in a lot of places, you know. I think that one of the best things Overwatch can have as a ranked game is map-based metas, where certain characters work best on certain maps. Like, I remember back in the day, you used to play Orisa Hog on Well, because you would go for those pull hooks into the well, and it was fucking fun. Like, it was Pog. And on Junkertown, you'd play Orisa Hog, and it was fun as shit. But, like, it's kind of much faded past that, where characters, like, they're trying to make it balanced everywhere and they don't have a niche. They're not good at one thing. They're trying to make everybody good at everything. And characters that can't do everything at once, your Rhines, your Winston out of, like, in ranked play, like, you know, what else would be like there's like, it's like if they're not good at everything at once, then they fall behind. That's why I think Hog keeps becoming good. That's why I think Sigma has always been like hanging around and always been good. Orisa, like now actually not having the shield and the pull and comboing with Sigma has kind of fallen out. But old Orisa was kind of like that, right? Where she had the shield, she had the utility pull. self-fortify, the consistent damage of the 150 damage Gatling gun at all times. There was like the constant damage uptime. People just, you wouldn't be able to beat these characters because they just did everything at once. Like my own personal philosophy is like, for example, Ryan, like if up close, you should just never lose. Like if in up close, like if you make it there and you get there and you start winning, you should never lose. And then on certain characters, like for example, let's say for argument's sake, Sigma's so good at everything else. He should be a jack of all trades where he's good at everything, but a master of none. Where it's like you can play him where he's really far away and do good damage, and play up close and do decent damage, but he's not good, like amazing at either of them, right? Like he's a middle ground somewhere where it's like you can do everything at once and be good at everything, but not great at everything. And it's like it has to be tuned to the point where if he plays against a character that excels in like the up close or excels at the range on those maps, then he shouldn't be able to beat them, right? Like in their own perspective realms, those characters should succeed harder. So I don't know if I would go out and say like certain characters should be dumpstered, but I will say there's a correlation. When certain characters are not good, the game is a lot more fun, and those ones for me are Brig and Hog.
Interesting.
Can I add a point really quick before Sam goes? Just a really quick point. The map specific balance thing is really interesting, and I actually would totally be for that, especially from a pro perspective, because like being able to have different compositions and styles tested per map is really cool to see. But I can already tell in a ranked situation, the problem would be you would have these ranked metas where if you are not picking these specific heroes for a specific map, you're kind of trolling again.
Yeah.
And you get into another throw situation. You get into a game, someone's picked Sim again, not viable on this map, you're trolling, we lose, GG's, toxicity, whatever. That just happens again. So like I still don't know how to solve that.
That's actually what I was going to say as well. Is that the counterpoint to that would be that it enforces the map meta harder. Sam, do you have any thoughts on this?
I got some truth bombs to drop.
All right, drop them.
Numero uno. I actually think we're there right now. If we're talking map based, like in ranked at least. I mean, the pro play, again, you tune Kitsune down and you tune some of the other stuff down, and you're actually there, I think. I just think that Kiriko, by the way, you want to change the tank meta? You got to look at the supports. The supports are the most meta-defining characters in Overwatch history, and that's just, if you look at the game, it's just been what it is. Right now, Kiriko is so much better than every other support. That's a little bit because she's too good, but also a little bit too much because like the other characters don't have the CDs we kind of talked about to compete. So I think right now, like at least in ranked, like you get Circuit Royale, you're playing Sigma pretty much every time. I think when the map pools open up and be a little bit different, that's when you start to see other picks. But a couple things to talk about. Will certain heroes always be bad? Can you make everything equal? No, you can't, right? The reality is certain heroes are going to be bad at certain ranks and certain heroes are going to be good at certain ranks. You don't balance to even out win rates because that's bad. What you do as a game designer is you balance to a game philosophy. And as long as those core values are met for the most part and heroes are in the ballpark hand in hand, then you've done a pretty good job. That's why when Flat says the game's fun when it's not Brig Hog, because those heroes fundamentally go against what made Overwatch at its core flow fun, in that I guess you could say Hog is proactive value, but because it's the one shot, because it's got a lot of uptime, because it's running around, and like it doesn't function like a tank in the way that AVRL described it, where it's like, okay, we're space makers, even the same with Charged Gauntlet. That's something that I didn't want to see too much emphasis on as Doomfist. I am a very like space takey Doomfist, control the flow of the fight player, right? And as long as you're giving each of these heroes tools to control the fight in their own way, as long as it adheres to those same core values in terms of, I think the most important thing for tank is I don't like one shots. I don't like 100% uptime, but I do like powerful space-taking cooldowns that, if used in the right order, if used to force people into certain positions, give you an advantage slowly but surely over time in winning the fight. And there's a lot of different things. I think that's what makes Overwatch so special, and in my opinion, have the highest skill ceiling in any shooter game or shooter-esque game, is that you had to learn more things to be good at Overwatch than any other game. And for me, that was the thrill of learning the game. And that's why I've been able to like get all of my roles up to like top 50 this season, is that like learning that core flow of the game for me personally is what is so fun about Overwatch. And as long as the heroes adhere to that, regardless of the character, you can learn how to fully play that character to its highest level, whether it be Reaper knowing when to fade in and how to engage, or Genji when to dash, or Echo when to fly, or Sojourn when to slide, or for a tank, Winston. It's all about not taking damage, trying to save that jump, get the right bubble positioning, Reinhardt, shield management. Like, you know, I think the most important thing is to balance that philosophy of high risk, high reward, and fair play to where something is not easier, it does not reward as much. But as long as there's that little bit of punishability on top of, hey, you learn how to position, time this right, take the right space, you will get rewarded regardless of the character. Because if you learn that core philosophy, then the game, you can have a wide variety of characters be picked. And I think Beta 1 did a great job of doing that. And I think what changed from Beta 1, obviously Junker Queen being added, she was pretty strong, but I think what really changed was how supports were changed. And again, if you want to change up the tank meta, look to the supports, because the supports are the most meta-defining character. And that's why I'm really excited. I know DPS mains are going to be mad about this, but here's another truth pill. I think the best thing that the best decision the dev team has made is to not make a DPS in the next year and to really focus on getting tanks and supports out there, because I think that if you want to spice up the game and keep things interesting, definitely the support is the way to go. And I think that's the role that's going to need the most attention in terms of how it's changed going forward.
I wholeheartedly agree with Sam. I think he's put it very eloquently. I will have to chime in on the support issue and say, having spoken to ML last week on this podcast, he would strongly disagree. And I also, having played a lot of support, I know you've played a lot of support as well, Sam. Because it's not like Kiriko. Like, I think support's probably the only role that doesn't have like a broken hero. I mean, I know you aren't too bright on Kiriko.
Kiriko's the best hero of the game. Aside from that, I would agree.
But yeah, it's like,
she's the best ultimate in the game.
She's the best ultimate in the game, and I feel like in a high tier setting, yes. But I feel like in every other tier, it's like, well, there's like a few ways. There's like tank gap, there's a team gap, and then there's hit scan gap. And I know we talked to Frito about this a little bit in the group chat. I think there's another, we can get to DPS now. I think we've had a good discussion on tanks, but I think there is a very real hit scan gap that exists, which is that the one thing that, you know, the tanks are giga strong. I'm not going to lie, as tank player hard, tanks are giga strong, but the one thing they can do is contest two different hit scan at two different angles. Sam?
Are you considering Sojourn to be hit scan or projectile? Because her rail
I'm considering her rail to be hit scan. I'm considering her hit scan because the rail is the real Sojourn, right? Please stand up.
Yeah. Actually,
yeah, Flats?
I think I want to start us off spicy. Just
oh, yeah?
As you go into that. I actually am like 90% sold that games are not, at the highest level, are not tank gap anymore. It's actually DPS gap. I think it's changed.
Well, okay. We've broached the subject.
Unless the tank's full trolling. Like, if they're like full trolling, like,
well, I mean, if anyone's full trolling, it's very difficult. I think just to round off the point I was initially starting, I think support is the least role where it's like, oh, well, their support is just, if both your supports are worse than both their supports, you definitely lose. But I think it's like, if the support is the least often, you're like, oh, their Kiriko is just so much better than our Kiriko, we just lose, right? I think like more often than not. Yeah, go ahead.
Can
Sam.
I say?
It's AVRL.
The support gap creates a gap elsewhere. If your support's a bad community of supports, you probably then create a tank gap where there wasn't one before.
But on the flip side, for the support player, they can do the gapping and not see the win. Whereas like quite often, more often I would say on the other two roles, when you're doing the gapping, you can see the win.
Yeah, also, because you could also play well as a support and maybe you're healing a lot, but then your team doesn't do enough with it. Unless you're like Kiriko just fragging, but...
Well, yeah, like either you frag, but it's like, but again,
So-
it's like either you frag and then you're then your team hates you anyways because you're like, why are you fragging? Why are you going off and getting kills? Like, you should be healing me. I'm dying. And it's like, so either you do that, or if you try and enable someone else and they fucking troll, then you just sit there and you're like, oh, great. Sam?
I want to speak to this because I feel like ML is the best streamer support player to touch the game. I've said this a lot, but if we're talking about which role is the weakest overall, I feel like I have one of the best perspectives as someone who's easily hit top 50 on each role on many different heroes. So you guys aren't wrong, but you have your order of operations wrong. In that, y'all already do PEMDAS. I'm sure everyone here did PEMDAS back in math. Like the order of operations of multiplying or dividing. It's parentheses, but whatever it is, I don't care.
Oh, they call it, you know what they call that in the UK? They call that BODMAS.
Don't tell me.
Good instinct, Sam.
Listen, Mr. Bator, I am so sorry. Please don't be mad at me. But here's what I'm going to say. So there's an order of operations to what the gap is, of what I've learned, right? From the start, if there's a massive support gap, again, what Avril said, and this is where he hit the nail on the head. It's not really going to matter as much unless your tank plays hog, like as to like if that tank gap is going to be there or if the DPS gap is there. I think Sojourn can kind of overwhelm it, but at a foundational level, if your supports, if there's a massive gap and you have one Ana player who's just awful, you're gonna, or a more one trick or something, you're gonna lose that game most likely. Most likely you're gonna lose that game, and there's not much you can do. So if the supports are even, that's when you start to see the big DPS gaps come in. Like, so if core one, the support is a foundation of your building, right? Then comes your tank. If your tank is a 3100 Winston player, the tank is like the middle part of the role, right? It's really hard to overcome that. And then at the very upper echelon comes in the DPS, right? If there is a really bad support on your team, the other two won't matter as much because they can't stand. But if it's relatively close on support, then that's the point where the other gaps come in. Because the reality is, at least at high level play, like how good your supports are, it's really going to affect what you're capable of doing if their supports are that good. But, like, do you get what I'm saying? I'm saying,
no,
like,
no,
the
100%.
rest after step one. So, obviously, in the pro scene, and this is where I can kind of start to see what Emma is saying, when both supports are able to build a solid foundation for the tanks and DPS to thrive off of, that's when the Sojourn gap really shines, right? I like to think of support as like a multiplier to the skill level of your DPS and your tank. Like, if the multipliers are relatively even, if there's a gap on your tank and support, you are going to notice. And I've had games on support where I'm fragging out as Kiriko. I'm like, dude, my Hanzo is 12 and 13. Like, GG, DPS gap. And in that situation, genuinely nothing you can do on support. But I could say the same for each role. Like, when I'm playing tank and my team is, like, not able to support me or not able to follow up, I'm like, there's nothing I can do. I just lose the game, right? And that's just the kind of the cold, hard reality of it. And I'm also going to spit one last hot bar. I have been grinding Echo this season. I have had no issue with hit scan. And I was very like, hit scan is so much better in Overwatch 1. I actually have very rarely had issue with hit scan. The only hit scan that I've seen that's been able to shut me down has been a Widowmaker on a good Widow map. I think that the rest of the hit scan, because of their limited mobility options and with the very fast-paced game right now that Lucio Kiriko is enabling, actually are struggling, especially the middle-tier ones. I think Cass and Soldier are garbage. I think they are garbage heroes, and their deaths per 10 reflect it, because if you know how to dive and you know how to set up, like, they just don't have the options to actually make something happen, and they can put out a lot of damage. Sure, in lower ranks, like, maybe because people can't dive as well, but I've had no issue just absolutely. Like, when I see a cast on the other team, I'm like, oh, baby, I'll play Echo into you all day, and you're not going to know where I'm coming from. Put me on Esperanza, my new favorite map in the game. I love Esperanza. I was a little bit nervous about Push, but I think it's just I don't like Coliseo or Queen Street that much because of their secondary rotations are just very frustrating to play. But Esperanza is the open street, beautiful map. Love that map. Absolutely
100%.
love that map. Like, literally the best map they've put in the game since, like, forever ago. Absolutely love that map. But yeah, so I hope that made sense what I was trying
100%.
to say. I don't know if I articulated it very well.
No, you did. You always do, Sam. You undersell yourself. You articulate very well. And as Portuguese people around the world cry at your pronunciation of that map.
I'm so sorry.
I gotta chime in. I gotta chime in on a
sorry.
few. I gotta chime in on a few things real quick.
SZ kind of thing going on at the end, but it's all good.
It's Esperanza, right, or something like that.
Esperanza. Yeah.
I could be wrong. I'm just mirroring what they say on the thing. There's a couple things I want to quickly add. I largely agree with you. I think the where I would disagree on the support category, and I have to say this because I think I have, someone's got to speak up for the sports. The difference is, I think, the role that throws the most is the tank, right? Like, if your tank is just trolling, it's nearly impossible to win, right? Like, that's the role that throws the most. Then it's support. I think then if your supports are trolling, you're gonna lose. Yeah. DPS, I think having bad DPS at a base level, I think can be overcome the most. I think though the supports have the least carry potential, right? They have the least potential overall, to take over the game. Like, they can't, like, if you're popping off, I think you have the least ability to take over the game, and that's why I think it's been frustrating for support players.
Well,
where
it depends on the hero again, too. So, like, this
True,
is the
but
big problem
I think
with support
big
categories.
picture.
Half those heroes weren't designed for this game. Moira, Brig, and Mercy. Mercy, I'm going to half a finger up. But, like, Moira and Brig, for example, and Ana's cooldowns are just too high. I've talked about this, too. I think an easy solution for Ana is, like, that there's no reason Sleep Dart should be 15 seconds. That's just, I love playing Ana. and she struggles to heal and do damage at the same time. To be clear, and I want to elaborate to be fair to the rest of the support category, I have played pretty much exclusively Lucio and Kiriko. That's it. I think their number one focus, and I'd love to come back to support players' opinions, if they take a look at the other supports. I don't know what to say about bringing Moira, to be honest with you. Like, I have thought a lot about it.
We'll tell you what, we'll get to supports in a sec. Let's keep discussing the DPS category. I agree with you. Let's talk about Genji. I do agree with you though. Cass, Soldier, Dumpster, but I think Ashe, Widow, and Sojourn, very, very strong.
Yeah.
So Genji, this has been the meme of the community for a while now, and Sam's had his share, and Sam's got a Twitter video if you're really interested in Sam's thoughts. Maximum ammo reduced from 30 to 24, maximum damage to 29 to 27. I'm gonna take it to Flats. I don't think we've heard from Flats in a while. Flats, Genji / DPS, give me your thoughts.
They nuked him. That's it. Like, he just got nuked. Like, you looked at the top 500 leaderboard, it's just Sojourns the whole way down. And then, like, the one Junkrat player, that's why Junkrat got nerfed.
There's a shocking number of Junkrat ones up there.
You see the Junkrat players? That you guys did that. That's why Junkrat got nerfed.
Actually, Junkrat was already, this nerf was already there when they got to top 100 FY. Like, this nerf is already there. This is just in the patch notes, but it was already done.
No, yeah, I know. It's more of a meme at that point.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, for FYI, guys, like, the junk nerfs were already there. They just hadn't said them out loud. Anyways, carry on.
I mean, Genji, God, I actually didn't think Genji was, like, that strong. Like, I thought he was strong. Like once everyone saw the owl meta, I didn't see many Genjis anymore. Everyone just kind of stopped playing them. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously there's some people that are, like, practicing for contenders and practicing other stuff, but it's like, I think with enough time, a small nerf would have been enough. Like give it a little bit of time. Like, other characters need a little bit more help. Like, Genji's been bad for so many years and is like a fun character. I feel like Genji is like the Rhine treatment now. It's like everyone wants to play Genji. Well, too many people pick Genji now. He wins too many games. We gotta nuke that character. Same thing happens whenever Rhine's meta. Too many people picking Rhine, gotta nuke him. Genji's the same thing. It's like, I don't understand why be so heavy-handed with a character like Genji. That
was his win rate insane in low ranks?
I honestly don't even know.
Ask Chat.
Chat,
you're in the low ranks. How good was Genji?
I get a lot of people complaining. Like, I gotta say, again, this is where, and I know we'll end up complaining about, well, why are we balancing for the low ranks? But I heard a lot more complaints about Genji than Sojourn, for example, from, like, people in my chat.
Because Sojourn couldn't be. They said it. Sojourn is terrible. It's a throw pick in the low ranks, but that's like ass backwards logic. Then, you know, it's like I was gonna disagree beforehand, like, really fast. Is like, you know, I think we're almost looking at, like, what, like, the worst case scenarios are instead of the best case scenarios for, like, whether supports or DPS or whatever is, like, crazy good or crazy bad. Like, tank's the most obvious to see if it's trolling, because, like, you know, if a tank's trolling, it's like everyone can see it. Like, yeah, it's like whatever, but, like, the DPS, like, highs are insane. Point being, though, I think the balance is the same thing, where it's like we're all looking at Sojourn being insane, but, like, for everybody else, for the other 35 million minus 3,000 people, it's a throw pick. It's terrible. But Genji's good because it moves fast and you just keep right clicking, and eventually you end up hitting enough shots, and it's like you kill them and then you dash through them, and it's like then they pick up their mouse and they have to, like, move it 15 times to turn around, or, like, you know, like, they're playing on a controller and it's like sticks, like, beep. It's like you have to, like, you turn, like, you know, 10, like, 360. It takes about 14 seconds, or, you know, it's like, it's insane that we balance around that. But it's like, at the same time, though, maybe people are playing Genji and are good at Genji because they've been playing it for 6 years. And it's the same thing when Rhine or Winston becomes meta, or even, like, let's say a new character comes out. Like, let's say Ramatra comes out. If Ramatra came out and wasn't just absolutely busted, like the most dominant thing you've ever seen, and Overwatch League was happening, I don't think they'd go straight to Ramatra. They'd probably play the comfort picks. They play whatever is, like, really strong number 2, maybe, because they haven't, like, built up enough time to, like, get good at them, or, like, really find a way where, you know, like, hey, like, you know, it's good synergy with this, you know, like, we haven't had any practice yet, like, let's not change on our strategies, etc. Maybe the reason why Genji's so good in those lower ranks is because people have been playing him for 6 years and they just keep playing him. So when he's good at high level and he gets those buffs, now you bump into him more and it's like, oh, that Genji player that you said is trolling and is a throw pick the last 2 years, now he's actually good and he's annoying because he's played nothing but Genji for the last 5 years. Like, I feel like some of the like really common characters that people love to play, people get good at them over time. And if they get strong, then it's harder to deal with them. And it's like, this is why you balance from the top down, though, because it accounts for that. And yes, it's annoying to deal with them when they're good, but then your characters are also good. So like you can swap and you can counter him with other things and like other play styles. Like Genji was not the #1 pick. Sojourn was. Genji was good, but even things like Reaper were better. You know, like I don't know, man. That's
saying Genji was good.
I think Genji was good, but I think that nuking him that bad, it's just it really sends the wrong message of who we're looking at.
One thing I want to add before I get to AVRL, the one thing that's not on the patch list is the DPS passive was a huge buff to get, maybe the best character to get buffed with the DPS passive, right? Like part of probably why he was oppressive is that his entire kit was I will snowball with dash resets, and then he snowballs further with reload speed and movement speed, right? So maybe on paper it wasn't so oppressive, but like the DPS passive was helping basically. AVRL, how do you feel about this?
They should not have had that DPS. I feel like I don't want to turn this into DPS passive discussion, but man, that DPS passive should not have been in the game. It fucked things up in my opinion. It's also what made Reaper insanely good as well. I don't know. Like, yeah, I do feel like the DPS passive pushed Genji over the line, so I could see that. I could see people feeling like Genji was oppressive because of the DPS passive, but that to me is not a problem with Genji. That's the problem with the DPS passive. Because some heroes, like, disproportionately benefit from it, whereas a Widowmaker, it might even be negative. Like, they might actually prefer there not to be a passive.
Well, with Hanzo, I spoke to Arg, and Arg said, this is a nerf to me, because when I get a kill, I'm moving faster, which makes it harder for me to aim.
Yes, yes.
And you don't shoot faster. So Hanzo gets 0. Literally negative value. And Hanzo was like my hero forever. Go ahead, continue. Sorry, it's just...
So yeah, that's what I'm saying, is the DPS passive is so bad. They got to do something about that. It's yeah, I don't know. It seems like most people are saying, from what I'm reading, that Genji is somewhere between good to oppressive in the lower ranks, because I get it. It's like the general skill level in terms of mechanics is probably lower. Genji's probably way more difficult to shoot down and punish. So a Genji in your backline, also coordination is probably worse. So a Genji in your backline flanking, less people turn around to help you, and so you're just the support dying to a Genji. I get it. I understand. I know most people in those ranks probably complain about Genji. And so to me, I'm not at all surprised Genji got nerfed, because I feel like for the majority of the middle rank players, Genji's a bit of a problem, where Sojourn's not a problem to them. A lot of them I feel like is maybe... They might be bandwagoning a bit, because Sojourn at those ranks... I mean, I'll give benefit of the doubt to the devs. Sojourn probably isn't that insane at those ranks, because most people can't hit the right clicks. And so if you can't hit the right clicks, you're just playing a worse soldier. You're playing a bad soldier at that point. But I also agree with, balancing top down. I said earlier, I think balance should be not even at the pro level, but at the top 500 GM level, which includes the pros anyway. And then, if you make Sojourn a little bit less oppressive at that rank, I mean, she's already not great in lower ranks. I guess her win rate doesn't really change. I mean, it's still bad, right? Maybe her win rate goes down. She gets picked less at lower ranks, but I don't necessarily see that as an issue, because to me, I feel like she's a character you want to grow into. She'd be like a high skill ceiling, difficult tier hero. Like, it's not a hero you pick up straight away. If you're learning the game, if you're in the lower ranks, that's probably not the hero for you. Neither is like a hero like Wrecking Ball, probably, or even like something like Echo, which requires you to have an insane hero pool knowledge. So I don't mind that Sojourn is like a very difficult hero to play, that once you're better at the game, you start picking up this hero and get and finding value, and that in the middle ranks maybe you don't find value. So yeah, balancing top down for something like that does make sense to me, regardless of what her win rate looks like in the low ranks.
I want to try and find a compromise here as well, because to be fair to the devs, that Twitter spheres thing was, I think, they were treated harshly on it, because I think what they were trying to say, and somewhat along paraphrase their exact words, was, we know Sojourn is oppressive. We want to look at curbing her lethality without dumpstering her in the metal ranks where she's already bad, right? Which people were like, oh, you're not nerfing her because of the metal ranks? I think what they would say is, well, no, we want to nerf her, we just haven't figured out how. What I would then say is the compromise to that is, it's more urgent to nerf something that's oppressive than to hold up because it's not getting like play time in the metal ranks, or we got success in the metal ranks, right? Like, you can nerf Sojourn now and figure out a way later to make her viable at the metal ranks and fair in the higher ranks, rather than be like, let her dominate, let her reign to the point where she's just obnoxious, right? Like, it's just obnoxious. When a Sojourn knows what to do, it's obnoxious, right? There's no other way about it. It's just nothing much you can do. So I feel like what they should have done, they can keep the philosophy of like, look, we're really careful about dumpstering her in the metal ranks. But first and foremost, stop her just dominating the game in a way that's like just making it unfun for other people. Sam.
So as a resident projectile DPS player, all right, I never got my time to scrim Genji. I was bummed. But I also want to be fair here because I love the good old let's dumpster Genji memes. I think they're hilarious, right? And I want to be fair to the devs, but also be fair to the situation. So the reason why I think the way the DPS were changed is embarrassing was because I'm willing to hear out Genji nerfs because there is a reality where Genji is oppressive in middle ranks because these kids cannot hit a cooldown. If the fate of the galaxy, if Thanos was about to snap his finger and he said, if you hit a cooldown on this Genji, I won't snap the Infinity Gauntlet. And these kids aren't hitting anything. Let's be real. No offense, guys. I love you all, but we know it's fine. And especially with, like Apple said, the DPS passive buff, which I kind of talked about. I was like, I when it first came out too, where I said, this is a little weird because like some heroes like Reaper and Genji are the two biggest benefactors from it. But Hanzo is just literally gets nerfed from it, and Widow literally gets nerfed from it. So like, I almost have to redivide the DPS category and have two separate passive based on the type of character it is, right? So I'm willing to hear out Genji nerfs. I don't like it considering we all know he's been garbage for years. His cooldowns are underwhelming. His damage is underwhelming, especially once people start to know how to play the game and the margin for error gets smaller and smaller. Genji's very good, like Roadhog is. When the margin for error is high, he's able to get away with a lot more. But when that margin for error shrinks as you go up in the ranks, he's not able to do more. But what really hurt me about this, and really what made me annoyed, is that, like, I don't care how Sojourn is performing in low ranks. It is very clearly oppressive. So if you're going to just absolutely take Genji and throw him down in the trash chute, you need to at least slap Sojourn on the wrist. That's all I'm asking for, because it's about the message that you care about your game integrity. And if you don't do anything to Sojourn, and you do that to Genji, which I would say Sojourn benefits from that DPS passive a lot as well. The reload time to build up the rail faster and the movement speed, that's big buffs for her. Like, she is definitely a benefactor. Maybe not as much as Genji is, but I would say it's about the same, honestly. I'd say ballpark it's the same. I think Genji might benefit a little bit more considering he doesn't have that much else to him. But what really frustrated me was the fact that the Genji gets just dumpstered to where, like, I won't even be able to pick the character really because Reaper is just going to fill right into his place, and Sojourn gets nothing. There's no excuse for that, in my opinion.
Can I just quickly ask Sam to elaborate? Yeah. Why, for players who are like, this is like the players who don't like Genji, they will say, well, why is this a dumpster? It doesn't seem like that much. It's like 2 damage on his right click, and his ammo is a little bit less.
His actual DPS output, compared to how difficult it is to get value on him when players are better at other heroes, is not that good. It's actually incredibly weak. Like, he's never killing a tank on his own. Like, Reaper can tank bust, Echo can tank bust, Sojourn can tank bust, and burst down targets. Like, Genji doesn't have great burst damage, despite what people might think. The only way he can burst you is if he gets right up on you and hits some good shurikens and then gets the dash, right? And when players in the game get better, they tend to not allow that to happen because their cooldowns and their abilities, like Sojourn's rail or Echo can fly, because I talk a lot about Echo because she's been my go-to this season. I'm not trying to say I haven't had fun. I've had a lot of fun this season playing a lot of Echo, and I want to give the devs credit in that the core game is good, but Genji, the reality is, does not have the damage options, and is not he is a hero that fills into comps, not makes metas. So the fact that the hero that got nerfed the hardest this patch was a hero that fills into the meta, that doesn't create the meta, that is a strong character, but not a dominant character when the game is played properly, it is just silly. And if you're familiar with Overwatch's history, you know that this is not true. Like, Genji is not that strong of a character if you look at the game historically. I would say that he definitely got a major buff in the playstyle change of Overwatch 2, absolutely, which is why I actually am willing to see out these nerfs. But the fact that they both came, that you dumpster 2 parts of the hero immediately without waiting to see what Kiriko is going to do to the game, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure Reaper would have taken his place either way with Kiriko, because Reaper is insane in Kitsune Rush. Insane, and he has the Wraith cooldown to sustain Force the Monkey. I think Reaper actually might have been a bit better pick than Genji would have been, even with this nerf. But again, I'm okay with one. But to me, it's why does this get addressed harder and first when there's nothing at all to address the elephant in the room, which is Sojourn, right?
So it's like
and that's where I'm kind of like, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so to summarize, the grievance is like, you're not even saying they should balance for one side or the other, but it's like when something is oppressive in the metal ranks, instantly the devs respond, but when something's oppressive at top 500, silence, right? That's the frustration. It's not just about like what's happening.
It's a very hard nerf too, to a character that's a fan favorite, like Flat said. Like, everybody loves to play Genji. I'm pretty sure the Dragon Short is the most viewed in all of Overwatch history. One of the best game trailers I've ever seen. Seriously, fantastic job. I think it's, would you guys say Genji's a fan favorite hero? I would say so. I would say Genji's a fan favorite hero. And it's just, to me, it's like, guys, like, I know we want each season to have an identity, but I can assure you, even if you just slap Sojourn on the wrist, she would still be played. Like, she is very, very good. And it's just kind of an insult to pro play that I think, especially coming off of such a fantastic Overwatch League meta with like the most diverse hero pool ever, to go like into this hard meta. And it's just like, guys, like, this is the driving force of your community, whether people like it or not. I know people might say, well, no, Sam, the casuals are. The casuals are important, but like, again, when you look at a ship, for example, you look at the figurehead, right? It's a very small part of the ship, but like that like is considered the icon of the ship. And there's a reason why the saying figurehead, I believe that comes from a ship. Am I incorrect in saying that? Like, the figurehead of the ship is like the front
Google
part of the ship. Is that where the saying comes from, or is that, maybe I'm wrong?
No, I'm not a ship guy.
I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off base on that. So if I am, I apologize. But, you know, like, the body of the ship is very important, but like the mass and the figurehead are what gets decked out, right? Because that's what people look at. That is the leader of what people look to, and it's so important to make sure that's in a good state. So for that to be neglected, I'm not upset that the body was looked at of the ship. I'm upset that that the mass and the figurehead was ignored completely, ignored. And it's just, and Genji, a fan favorite hero that's infamous for being dumpstered when he shouldn't be. It's just in the grave already.
Give him triple jump back. There you go.
Oh God, ledge dash.
So two caveat is that obviously the figurehead is actually a powerless figure, so that's actually ironically very apt in the wrong way, in the sense that people everyone looks at the figurehead, but it's actually a powerless thing. So in that case, Genji's actually perfect.
Perfect for Genji.
So yeah, he's actually the perfect fit. I just want to quickly, actually, we've kind of dwelled on this a lot, but I want to take it to a larger picture question. I'm going to ask Flats as we kind of scroll down, just Junkrat and Sombra Nurse, which again I'll just show for the sake of showing. What Samito's alluding to there is about like the popularity again, right? This becomes a controversial topic as well, because people say, well, the popularity should have no bearing, right? It's like there's two schools of thought. It's like the popularity should have no bearing, or it should have some bearing. What do you think, like, on this whole issue? Because obviously you play Rhine, and that has another like a sort of thing attached to, like a stigma, right? Because in the metal ranks, people pick Rhine all the time anyways. So the minute he's strong, people are like, whoa, too strong. But then at the higher level, he's always bad. Where should that land?
Well, honestly, for a long time, I've always tried to be like objective, right? Like, try to see both sides, try to figure out how, like, what's the best way to go forward, kind of like, you know, what is like the most beneficial for the game, etc. But like, I'm starting to like kind of lean towards more like, no, actually, I just think this is the way. And I think even with something like Rhine is a good example. Rhine even needs to be stronger than he is. Because he's terrible in higher level play. He's just not good. But in the lower ranks, he'll always be played, and people enjoy that. People enjoy playing Rhine. Why is that? I think he, like how Sam was kind of saying earlier, is one of those core heroes that fundamentally still stands for what Overwatch originally was. That space taker. You don't want to get too close to him, because if you get too close to him, then now it's scary. The biggest complaint for Rhine players, like people playing with Rhine players in the metal ranks, is the shift button. Like, think about that. Like nobody ever complains when they hit shatters. People don't complain about the swings. They don't complain about the window fire strike when that was a thing. The only thing people complain about is when their Rhine shift into the enemy team. That's it. And that's the only ever complaint that's ever come up. And realistically, I think that whenever a character like that becomes stronger, people are going to want to pick them more, because one, it's a comfort pick. It's been around since the game was made. So there's many people that have experience with playing it, and two, people enjoy playing it. They think it's a fun thing to do. And on top of that too, not many people get to really, at least in high level play, don't get to play it that often anymore. Because I feel like there's like people look at like Cloudy and like, oh well, Cloudy's good at Ryan and plays it all the time. He doesn't play anything else. He just plays Ryan all day long. He's insane at it. Like if we balanced every character because one person was good at the character, then like we'd never buff or nerf anything, because there's one tricks for every single character in top 500. They exist, and it's kind of frustrating because I think that especially the main tank breed has died. There's not really any left, and I think that's one of the things that keeps people from really like bringing that question back. I was like, do tanks like Rhine, Winston deserve to be stronger than what they currently are? Because things like Roadhog and Zarya and Sigma just keep creeping their ways back up. Orisa, I don't know how you're going to solve that. That character, I think, is in like such a weird spot now where like she's just an unkillable wall. Yeah, for like lower ranked players, like she's so unfun to play against, but like she's fun to play at the same time. It's like, I feel like why haven't people looked at Orisa more? Almost like, if Orisa's so dominant and so unkillable in the lower ranks, why not change Orisa somehow? Like, I feel like she's terrible in high level play and she's oppressive in low level play. Why doesn't Orisa get anything looked at? Why? Because nobody talks about it. Why is Ryan not getting any big changes? Because nobody talks about it. I think that to be honest with you, things like Genji is another good example, and Ana is another good example. Is when Ana's really strong, people enjoy playing Ana, but I think she's also one of the fastest to get cut back down to size, because she'll have high pick rates, have high win rates, and that to the devs is a giant warning sign of, we now need to nerf this character, because they balance a lot on stats, and I don't think it's totally the way. I think there needs to be a somewhat in-between balance of stats and feel, and I think that player perceptions is something that should be taken into account for. Of, hey, people enjoy playing this character a lot.
Stats is objective and feel is biased, so I think that's the position as well.
Yeah, I mean, not wrong, but then if we only go off of stats, we get a boring game. And who defines boring?
I agree with what you're saying, but I'm also saying, like, if you balance off a feel, it's like, well, whose feel matters? Like, who has the objective feel? Like, everyone, people have different feels, right? Is what I'm saying. So it's like hard to like nail down, like, well, what is the feel? Whose feel is the right feel? You know what I'm saying? Like,
and the other truth as well is that we're quite biased as players in that, like you said, Flats, like our conversations can impact what people do and don't play. I feel like we spoke Hog into utterance in like a demon that haunts nightmares. Like a lot of creators started talking, Hog's coming, guys, Hog's coming. And, we kind of speak these things in utterance. And sometimes Owl can show things into strength, even if they're only good in a coordinated setting, right? Like, I'll run something in a coordinated setting, people will be like, that hero is strong, even if actually in a solo setting they're not. So yeah, like just to add on AVRL's point, it does, like, I agree with you. I do think feel is a factor, but then it's like, well, they might be like, well, we played off of feel, Genji got nerfed because people felt he was fucking like dominating.
But we do the opposite end though. We don't talk about the good end of the feeling, but we talk about the bad end of the feeling. Like, Hog's a good example. Like, people don't like getting one shot by Hog, right? Like, we'll complain about that and we'll talk about like that maybe shouldn't be a thing. Like, that feels bad to play against. Well, then why don't we talk about things that feel good to play as, right? Like, I feel like there's two ends of it, but it's almost like more, I don't know, taboo to talk about like, hey, maybe like we should make this thing better because it's fun to play. as opposed to, no, we need to nerf this other thing because it feels bad to play against. I feel like they both deserve to be a part of the conversation.
So some priority for like, these are the heroes that we think the community enjoys having in their games.
I mean, I guess that, but it's like, what makes those characters fun, right? Like, what makes Rein fun? What makes Rein fun is the leading your team, the taking space, the being aggressive, but like, you know, I wouldn't say like the pin off cooldown, even though there are people that pin. Like that was always the part of his kit that was the worst. Like, arguably the worst ability in Overwatch 1 was pin. It was such an all-in ability that like very rarely worked out, and you know, obviously they changed it so now you can cancel it. And I think the best part of pin now is just being able to pin cancel the other tank off the map in very niche, small situations. It's like, is that fun for Rein? Yeah, it's pretty fun. But you've also lost the part of, you know, the shield is like, you're not really going to get all the way into the enemy team a lot of times on shield. They'll just kite you and they destroy your shield and you're dead. Or, you know, for example, even Fire Strike, like Fire Strike being that 10 damage nerf isn't as threatening as it used to be. Like, if Fire Strike was 100 damage, right, and you could 2-tap with somebody, if you nailed both of them, that would be pretty scary. But now you're like, I'll survive. Like, as long as you're away from them, it's not that big of a deal. Those are parts I think that need to be talked about. Is like, is that a fun part of the kit off of feeling? Because like, if you want to talk like damage numbers at that point, it's like, well, actually Rein's damage on the stats chart is actually pretty much in line with the other tanks, so we don't think he needs a damage buff. Like, that's what I mean by stats versus feel, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. My final follow-up question before we move on is like, from the dev perspective, well, how do we measure that feeling? Like, where do we go to seek this feeling? Like, what is the seeker of the feeling?
Hard to quantify. I don't know how you quantify feeling is the issue.
You have to you have to listen to people who objectively understand the game and why the gears turn the way they do. Not just, oh, if you do this, if you do X, Y happens. Okay, why?
Yeah.
You gotta listen
We
to
send
people
this
who understand
podcast to the devs every episode. We just email it.
They do
down.
listen. Yeah. They listen to this every single podcast. The community team listen to this, and then they give feedback.
This podcast, we will dictate the feels.
We are the feels. Right, we tell you what to do.
We are your feels now.
Yeah, we are the feels now. Send your. That actually gives me a good time to plug that, actually, because a lot of you guys ask questions in the chat, but I've now made a separate channel for this in my Discord server where you can go and ask your questions, and in the end we'll quickly run through the questions. So rather than like spamming chat with your questions, because we're never gonna fucking read them, we have a specific part of them later. So if you got
the illusion.
I mean, we always read your question. I mean, to be fair, we do read.
Keep going. We always read your questions in bossing say.
Yeah. Okay, so let's because we got still lost. We've gone like an hour and a half. We've barely left the DPS balance changes. Final one, just Kiriko, the swift step in vulnerability duration reduced a little bit.
Anyone care about Sombra? Do we want to talk about Sombra?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Sombra. I'm gonna say this: most unfun character in the fucking game.
Feel.
And yeah, I mean, again, it's like hard to quantify. How can I say to the devs like this? Well, I can say why, but then like they would have to do it on an individual basis, right? They'd have to go case by case and be like, players keep saying, hey, this character that runs are invisible and holds right click in my face and just disables me from doing what I want. That's not fun for me. So yeah, I think I'm glad these nerfs are here, but it still doesn't change the fact that she literally just runs around and hacks. Like if you're a tank,
how do you fix her? I don't know what to do about this hero. Like this
permanent Viz gotta go.
Yeah, the permanent Viz has to go, I think, first and foremost.
I think the permanent Viz got way stronger in this game because of pings, first and foremost.
True, but also
That's
the thing is
point,
like
actually,
it is a good point. It is a very good point. But also the other factor is that like having to decloak to hack gave you a bit of time as well, and the pathing of it is the annoying part, right? The annoyance comes that there's no real way to anticipate where the Sombra's coming from to hack you and when. It's just like it could happen at any moment. At least the decloak gave you an audio cue before the thing started. And the timer on the invis meant that there was like a limited window of like where that was happening, right? It's like, okay, she's going in, and like with a different flanker, you know the pathways they can come from, and you can potentially spot them if they're pathing badly. Like, okay, they're coming from this direction. With Sombra, it's just like, there's no way. Just literally at any moment, any time she appears.
I got it. I have the solution.
Yes, go.
I just thought of the craziest idea for Sombra ever. This is fucking insane.
Solve Overwatch, Avril.
I know Aaron's listening. Aaron, this is for you, but this is fucking insane. Instead of the current hack, how like I don't know what to do about the damage multiplier. Let's just pause on that for now. I have no idea. But the actual like silence part, like the CC part of the hack, which disables your abilities. Instead of disabling your abilities, what if we just, let's say it pauses your cooldown and freezes it where it is for like 6 seconds. So what I mean is like if you've got like your cooldown's about to come off and then you get hacked and it just stops it where it is, like 2 or 3, whatever it left it is. But it does mean that when you get hacked, you can still use whatever ability is available, but it's just not going to cool down. Like it's just stuck where it is for a little bit. And maybe the same with the ultimate. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, so when you get hacked, you can actually still use stuff and you can still like interact. You're not just locked out of using your abilities. Your abilities don't move in terms of the cooldown. Like they're just stuck where they are for the duration.
I would rather take more damage than deal with that. I can't lie.
Right.
I'd rather take more damage.
A small window into what it's like in the dev team.
What if it was
small
only
window.
for like a second?
What the hack?
What was the second?
The current hack you mean?
What is the second?
Oh yeah. No. Well, I mean, okay.
That'd be kind of useless. You know what the big problem is with Sombra?
She exists.
True.
Yes and no. I feel like the big problem was where this one in particular went wrong. You remember my opinion on perma invis, how I thought that was just like a really bad change and it kind of baited low end players to run around in stealth and think like every Sombra review I do, these kids are running around as if they're playing Dead by Daylight, playing hide and go seek. Like I'm like, hey buddy, just so you know, you might think you're doing something, but you're really not doing anything. Hacking while invis was one of the worst changes they could have made for, especially with perma stealth. It's just like you can't. I think the frustration really stems from your inability to interact with it. And what makes Overwatch so fun, and to describe what Flats was talking about on Ryan, it's the game flow of constant interaction with other players and reading it and the push and pull, the flow of the game, the tides of Overwatch, I like to call them. And with Sombra, like she can disrupt that flow without you being able to interact with it whatsoever. And in a way, it's in the same boat as a one-shot, and that the reason why one-shots are so frustrating, it's like we always talk about, a one-shot suck, is because generally speaking, there's no interaction on your end that you can do to stop it. You're just dead, right? In a more mild version of that, that's where I feel like the core issue of people's interaction with Sombra, it's like, well, what as a player can I do? And listen, I had to play a lot of Doomfist this season. And all these, like, Ruben would go Sombra against me, and I actually chased him. It's like the old Mother Russia jokes. They're like, oh, in Russia, Doomfist chases you. You know the old Russia jokes or whatever it was. I forget, like I forget what they were. They were very good jokes. But I feel like the inability to interact and stop it is what made it so frustrating and disrupted that flow of core Overwatch that everyone loves so much, that I feel like they really did a good job of capturing with Overwatch 2. So, I think if you want to fix Sombra 1, I feel like this patch is a slap on the wrist. I think it's a needed nerf, and I think it's a good change, but I like the ability to hack while invis is just an awful addition to the game. It just should not happen. I don't even think she should have perma invis. I think that actually nerfed her for a vast majority of the player base because they just run around in stealth and think they're doing something. So I think you remove the ability to hack while invis so players can have a better job at interacting to it. I don't think you have to change the hack too much. The 25% multiplier I think is okay. That'll let her still frag out, but I'm just not a big fan of perma invis or the hack while invis. I think that's the biggest problem.
You really think this is a slap on the wrist? I think this is pretty heavy nerf, but for me.
So the big reason I think it's only a slap on the wrist is because it didn't change what made her really good at her core. Other DPS will outshine her, and I think you're right on that. I don't think she's going to be hard meta, but her core win conditions haven't changed. Building the EMP and getting the big burst damage off her, so very, very
she's not fun to play against. But she's not oppressive anymore, right? I think with this, she's a lot less oppressive. Like if you get hacked, she's not just like destroying you with a 40% damage buff anymore.
She's less suppressive to supports. I think equally suppressive to tanks though, like, or near enough. Not, you can't get double hacked, but if someone wants to run around and just hack you all day, like you're still gonna.
It slows it down a lot, but the core, like her core play style is still the same, and people will still find issue with that. And I think that unfortunately, because of the way it was changed, I think low SR players are still really going to struggle with her. But I think good Sombra's a high level play. Like their win cons are still the same. Like you didn't change the win cons. I think her build rate will be slower because she's doing a little bit less damage. That 15% less damage to hack targets is less, and that'll slow her down, which in turn will lower her pick rate because building EMP fast is what makes her so good. And then getting that EMP, especially before support ults and just winning a fight early is the best way to do it in ranked. But I think at her core, I still consider that a slap to the wrist, unlike Genji, who just like those numbers are going to really, really hurt him and his core playstyle. But Sombra, like at her core, if you still know what you're doing, you're still going to be pretty good. I just think other picks will be better.
Fair. Now, before we round off the DPS category, we have gone a lot. I just want to quickly, well, Mei is back. Firstly, do you guys have any thoughts on Mei?
Love her.
I should put her back into
Yeah,
in jail.
I'm with Avril.
Yeah.
I'm with Avril.
I find another bug.
Listen,
Like,
I'm just saying, hey,
here's my problem.
Mei,
Here's my
come
problem.
on.
As someone who played a lot of Overwatch 1 Mei, like Mei and Reaper were my 2 Overwatch 1 DPS picks. What I really lament the loss of is the having to make a decision between disabling and damaging. Like in Overwatch 1, you're kind of like, obviously the wall annoying. But obviously with 2 tanks, there's more ways to mitigate the one tank getting isolated, like the D.Va can fly up and help or whatever, right? But secondly, it's like, okay, well, if I'm left-clicking, I'm mostly focusing on disabling this guy, right? I'm taking like a couple seconds to freeze this guy, and then my team follows up. And then the right-click is like, I'm going for damage now. I'm trying to kill this thing from range, or I'm trying to finish this target up that I froze. Now that you're doing 100 DPS while slowing people, like the freeze you don't even need the freeze. Because you're doing 100 DPS to the character already. So in the 2 seconds that it would have normally frozen, and then you must shoot the right click, that character's already dead while being slowed. So like it's worse in terms of like the frustration factor, because you're dead. By the time you would have been frozen, you're now dead. So like, what would you rather be? I'd rather be frozen than dead, personally. And it's like, as the Mei player, it's the Mei player. It's just kind of like brain. I know if it's a tank, it's different, but like as a Mei player, it just feels brainless, because it's just like I'm just running around spraying this left click everywhere. There's almost zero occasion to right click.
Well, there's your mistake. You should always right click. I was a right click Mei.
I love right clicking, but it's like now it's like 100.
You should be right clicking, yeah.
Yeah, but like but for the normal player, it's just like, we'll just walk around with 100 DPS in someone's face.
Yeah.
With like no accuracy. The precision is what, like, if it was like hard to like execute, then you could justify the 100 DPS. But it's like, just fucking hold it in the direction. It's 100 DPS per second for multiple targets.
Up. It shouldn't just be like a raw 100. Right? Like it should build up over time, I feel, maybe, like on a target. I don't know.
That would make sense.
Like a sim. More like a sim.
That makes sense. More sense to me. I don't think it's in a way that's like it's gonna dominate the game. It's just annoying. It's just one of those kings where it's like, this is just stupid. I'm being slowed and I'm dying.
I like what she does from a team perspective in terms of her interaction with Ryan and like enabling those types of comps and the fun things you can do as a team for walls. But I think she's like an annoying character at a casual level, just to face, just like you see in Mei. I don't know that anyone has fun playing against the Mei.
Yes.
Is what I'll say.
Yeah. Nobody enjoys that interaction, because especially like if you're the one being isolated, let's say you're the tank. What did you opt into there? It's like, oh, well, she put a wall behind me and now I'm fucked.
Slowed down with 100
slowly
DPS.
dying, just like slowly, being burnt down while you can't escape because you're the same speed as them by default, and now you're getting slowed. So it's like, it's just like, yeah, doesn't feel fun to me. So I'm not a huge fan of Overwatch 2 Mei. Any thoughts, Flats or Sam, before we move on?
I think they just raised her skill floor. That's it. Like, her skill floor was a lot worse, I'd say, like when you had to hit the left click and then the right click to kill somebody. It's just like, now, if you're not as good with her, I feel like you can still get a lot of value, just like running around, which is, I don't think it's like that great, but the removing the freeze was such a nice quality of life change, because, like, realistically, I don't know how many Mei players went around killing squishies. That's, like, not Mei's role. Mei's role was always to isolate tanks and basically make your life a living hell. By removing the freeze, the 100 DPS doesn't mean shit to you anymore. It's like, of course you're taking damage and you're being slowed down, but you can fight for your life now. You can rock them, you can shield, you can shoot back, swing back, like whatever you got to do. Like before, when you were walled and frozen, you were just dead no matter what. There was nothing that happened. You died unless a lamp came out, pretty much. And then people will be like, obviously, like the lamp was like the problem. And it's like, well, yeah, the lamp was the problem, but it's like the lamp was the only thing that saved you at that point too. Like the Mei was also annoying to deal with. So I agree with you. Like it is, it's not as skillful, but I actually think that Mei is much better nowadays than what she was before.
The irony, the ironic part of that is if you go to the Overwatch forums, people will say like, "Oh, they ruined Mei. They removed the freeze. They made her bad." It's like they actually made her better.
Well, yeah. I think, and then this is the discrepancy. I think what Flat's talking about is like, is it when players are good? But I think when it's like when players are bad, it's just like you know, the 100 DPS
They
is
raised the skill
better.
floor of it though.
It was cheesy.
Well, lowered
That's all
it.
was.
You mean
Yeah.
like it's easier, like lowered it.
No, he's
Raise
saying
it.
that May is objectively harder to play because you can't corner it and just walk up to a tank, freeze them, and shoot them in the head. Like you actually
you
have
can just
to.
kill-
No.
you can kill low HP
I disagree
targets
with
now.
that. No, I
yeah, but
disagree
like
with
to
that.
set that up is like really difficult. To
No,
do.
Sam, you're forgetting that to know when and where to wall. Like I've watched a lot of bad Mei players to know when and where to wall properly, and then like that's a skill. Like that requires enough knowledge of like the
right.
engagement compared to like what normally Mei players do is they like because everyone's in fucking Narnia, right?
Wait,
First and
I think
foremost,
Flats is saying. Are you saying? Because Flats is saying.
I'm
that
saying it's
they-
dumber. It's dumber in Overwatch 2.
Okay,
I think Mei
disagree
is
with
dumber
you.
in
I
Overwatch
think
2.
you have
I
to be
am not.
smarter, like to get
I think-
the value. I think it
think
was
you also
easier
have to
to
be
freeze and
smarter.
kill somebody than it was because now the difference is that they can actually interact with you while you do it and get away and use cooldowns before they couldn't. So, like, I agree the damage is kind of dumb, and I think.
No,
The reason
I would
the
like to-
floor has come up is because you can walk up to a squishy, hold left click on them for 2 seconds, and they die. That's easy. That's much easier than freeze them for 2 seconds, then right click. That's an easier interaction. I feel like maybe I'm wrong. Like
so you're saying
are
Mei's
we
easier in
in
Overwatch 2 because
agreement?
I'm saying Mei's easier in Overwatch 2.
I say the floor has come up. The floor has come up where that's much easier, but the part
That would
of
mean
Mei that
lowering
was
the floor,
cheesy,
though, wouldn't it? Then would that not be lowering the floor?
The
Am I
floor
wrong
is
with
like the
term?
bottom, like how terrible
Yeah, so
Mei
you're
can
making
be.
it easier for someone to get value with it. So it's like
Now we're
easier.
getting to the definition of flaw because I think both definitions are technically true. And this is the problem with talking about skill flaws.
So basically, the character is easier to play versus most players.
We'll
but it
forget about the
removes
term. Let's just talk
cheesy
about it like
factor.
this. Yeah.
It removed the cheesy factor of
Let's
being able to just freeze a tank.
Talk about it in a way whether it's like easier or harder to play.
I just think
'cause
it's easier.
Yeah, the skill floor, both lowering and like raising the skill floor, can both be synonymous, and the English language is very confusing.
It
Because
is.
they both could mean the same
language.
thing, even though they sound like the opposite thing.
True.
Right? Because it sounds like the barrier of entry, we talk about skill floor in terms of barrier of entry, if that goes down, it's easier. Then what Flight's talking about is a skill floor raising means the bottom level of the skill floor Mei has gone up, which means she's better. So like both end up kind of in the same place, even though they sound like different things. So fuck you, English. We'll just say
Yes,
she's easier.
true. Let's
Yeah.
turn this into French
go with that.
podcast.
I would like to see something different on her left click though. I would. I think it would
Yeah,
be
me
cool
too.
to potentially. I'm not sure how you guys would feel about this, but you know, Mei could be a potential anti-dive character to slow the game down a little bit without being horrible. Like, what if she could either speed her team up by like freezing the ground and make them like move a little bit faster on the ground, or like the other team is a little bit slower on the ground? I don't know. I think that there is. I do understand Mei players' frustration though. I think Mei is better for the game without her freeze, but I do understand that other players want some kind of utility on her left click, and I'm willing to explore that, though I don't know exactly
Frozone.
what it should be. Frozen, yeah, that's yeah.
We did that in our patch,
can
in
Mei
our,
not
in our
Frozone?
Overwatch 2
Come on.
patch with the ice path. We did that. We tried that. It was memes and jokes.
It'd be interesting to see. I think that's a discussion that potentially is worth having to make the character still
She
feel
turned into a
unique.
speed rush character. He just froze on the floor.
That'd be funny.
I welcome our crazy
Hey, Flats can
overlords.
play more Rhine.
Yeah, I'm totally for it. Some slush rush.
Slush rush.
Wow.
I remember you
Oh,
were playing Bastion in the pugs we did, and you were just like zoomies me, and then they like put the path on you, and you were just in the turret form, and you slid into the picture, just gunning them like the drive-by Bastion.
Good
Um,
stuff.
Right. So let's quickly have a word on supports then. Kiriko change impactful, Sam? Doesn't really change why Kiriko's being picked, is it?
He won't leave till our ult's nerfed. Can I rant about the invulnerability for a second? Can
Sure,
I
go
just
ahead.
talk about it for a second?
Go ahead.
So, what is so frustrating about the invulnerability, is the fact that it blocks all hero interaction. That is like, if I'm playing Doom and she cleanses, like, I can't interact with the player. And do you want to know what the worst one for me was? I know Flats is going to like this one, but oh my god, this sent me. I'm playing Hog. I'm dirty. I know. Flame me for it. Toss a hook at this Rhine one trick on Midtown. Get him. I'm like, oh, baby, this kid's mine, right? Pull him in. He gets cleansed. My hook doesn't break, and he can take no damage. So I have just pulled a max HP Rhine into my whole team, and none of us could interact with him for like the first like whatever the time frame was. And I was like, well, okay. So tell me if as Doom, like I try to punch a player and they cleanse, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with like Kiriko having an ability to answer stuff. But I go straight through their team, and like that gets me killed as Doomfist because as Doom you want to punch, like if you're anticipating hitting somebody versus not hitting somebody, like the punch is gonna stop me so I won't die. Like all of that's in my head. Like I've thought about 3 cooldowns ahead as Doomfist. You have to, right? So if that gets changed, like and I go right through him as that one player and I can't even interact with him. But Rhine, my hook doesn't break. It's a little confusing. That doesn't seem very consistent, right? And also, like, if somebody's 1 HP and you can't even shoot them as they get healed, at least with Immortality Field, which I absolutely despise as an ability, but at least you can still interact with that player. Like, if I'm Doom, I can hit them and stun them and build my shields. If I'm Genji, I can dash through. If I'm Echo, I can still beam them and keep them low. But with Invuln, on top of the cleanse, like, I literally can't interact with that player. And I think that that's not in the best spirit of Overwatch. I'm okay with it getting potentially more burst healing or something. I'm not really sure what, but I'm not a big fan of your inability to interact with the player at all while they're invuln.
Chat, you heard it here first. Samito just defended BAP Immortality in some fathomable fashion. He actually said something else was better than BAP Immortality.
I think I saw some alcohol there. That must be it.
That's it. He's off the juice.
Henry
He's
McKenna,
absolutely
man.
off the
McKenna
juice.
hits
He just said that
know.
something was worse than Immortality. It's over. It's over. AVRL,
Exactly.
I'm putting words in your mouth. That's the quote on the headlines. AVRL, what do you think about this?
I think the strongest part of her kit is the ultimate. So I agree with Sam. Unless her ultimate gets nerfed, she is still super strong. I don't think I have as many issues with her invulnerability as what Sam's saying, but like, I can see the part where you can't interact with the invulnerability being pretty frustrating. I don't really know what to do there. Like, I mean, is it better that we just get rid of invulnerabilities and we then you start to get in the conversation with Immortality Field as well? Like maybe she just sticks. Maybe it's just like a hard cleanse, but the invulnerability part isn't really part of it. It is only 0.75 seconds though. But like, if you're really good at the game, that's all you need. But if you're not very good at career code, like I don't know, it feels like it doesn't really last long enough either. It's a very interesting hero that I feel like, to me, as long as they do something about the ultimate, I think I'm happy. I'm still willing to at least hold out and see how the hero looks after they nerf the ultimate before I look at any of the other abilities.
Just spitballing now before I ask Flat's opinion. Maybe one thing it could do is just, rather than phasing them, because what it does is phase them, right? We could just lock everyone's HP for that
Like 0.75
second
effect, if that's what you wanted to do.
Or even because I think what they wanted was like, you know, what they had in the trailer where the Junkrat tires coming in and she goes pfft, and it's just like it does nothing, right? I think they want that. So I guess they don't want the HP to go down to 50. Basically, is the point, right? They want it to be like nothing happened to you. So you could just lock their HP place, and that way, at least the stuff that you're talking about, Sam, where it's like if I'm trying to punch this guy away, he's getting punched away still. He's just not losing HP.
I don't think the devs want to copy ammo. I don't think the devs want to literally just copy ammo. Like they want the hero.
But
to
it wouldn't be
feel
ammo. It would
and
just be
for it to
lock, like because ammo locks you to a minimum. This would just lock your HP for 0.75 seconds. Like, it would just be like if you're 500, you stay 500 for 0.75. You get me?
But I can still
But you can still physically move this guy around.
Physically work.
You can move
right?
this guy around.
How about everything's the same, but they're not phased and you can interact with them? Actually,
Yeah,
that's pretty much what SPV just said. That's pretty much what SPV just said. But
That's
like, I don't know.
what I just said. Yeah.
That
Yeah,
would
okay.
be- that would
So
be
we're
a
on the
good
same
start.
page.
I would like that.
We're on the same
I
page.
think that's one thing where I'm like, I don't like hero interactions where you literally like it's like you just can't do anything about like hack while invis, one shot sometimes, but especially this one where it's like, oh, you can make all the right plays and doesn't matter.
And Flats does as well, where you're charging and then suddenly the character just goes poof out of your charge.
I mean,
Yes.
I had an interaction yesterday where I like basically flew through one where she was like coming out of it, and I was just zoom, and I thought I had her, and I was like, wait, no, I don't. Too late. I was too deep at that point. GG. Lost the game off it actually because I couldn't tell because like it's so hard to tell because of how small she is. Her character figure is so small. You actually can't really see her in the pin. So you have to like wait for the thing to pop up saying like, you know, it's like you have someone pinned, but at that point it's too late. You've already committed too far. Man, like that character actually hard counters Ryan completely. Like cleanse, you can literally just cleanse shatter. You can either cleanse it beforehand or after. It doesn't matter. Like you like if you hit shatter, just boop, everybody stands back up. Doesn't matter. Not being able to pin interact is kind of awful. Like I mean, I'm sure Doomfist and Ryan actually pretty much interact the same way, where it's just like, well, now I can't do anything to you anymore. You're just see you later, you know. And it's like if I made a decision to use my 8-second cooldown to pin into you, and you just go boom, and it's like, well, I'll go fuck myself, I guess. Like, what's the point, you know? So it's like there's a lot of things there, but I saw it, you know. Like I'm actually surprised more people haven't questioned the ability to teleport through fucking walls yet.
Yeah.
Like it really has just like it kind of like wants you to play that flank aggressive support style, and it's like that's fine, but at what point is it like, are we sending the wrong message to players that you should be going on the flank constantly to look for off angles, to look for kills, instead of staying with your team or helping your team in a lot of ways? And at what point do we also give too much an ability to like, hey, we isolated you away from your team. I primaled you off like 3 miles away from your team. You're dead. Oh, nope, you just teleport through the 4 walls I put you behind. Oh, okay, see you later. Like at some point, like it's like, where do we draw the line? And I would actually be totally fine with like compensating for her somewhere, but like to be honest with you, like it's like, where do we start? Like the invulnerable like doesn't last that long, but not being able to interact is ass. Her ultimate is just unbelievably broken. Her damage, I think, like is kind of like trash. And I think a lot of times, like, it's promoted players to playing that aggressive DPS playstyle, but like 99.9% of players can't actually do it. So they end up trying to be the next DPS Kiriko, and instead they let their tank die because they're playing Lucio Kiriko because they expect to be playing the speed comps. But instead, the Kiriko's looking for damage. So she has 700 damage and 400 healing on the first fight. And it's like, that good job. You shot their tank a few times, but nobody died for it, and your tank died within the first 15 seconds. It's like, at what point do we like kind of like realize like what messages are we sending to players? How many things are we allowing you to get away with? How many bailouts are there in the game? And on top of that too, where do we lie on like letting you not even like have bailouts for yourself, but bailouts for your teammates, and do those feel fun to play against? It's like, I feel like Kiriko has so many things that are like, why don't we question those more? Because she's not like Brig, where Brig is like let's say Release Brig. She was so easy and fundamentally easy to play. You just click 2 buttons. That was fundamentally broken. But because Kiriko's really like high skill, where we're like, yeah, we can get away with that. And it's like, at what level do we go like, okay, yes, it's high skill, but like it's so high skill that it's not actually that useful, and it's sending the wrong message to players to play that play style, where it's like, what if you actually made her damage instead of 120, you made it 80 for headshots, but you made it her kunais much bigger, and it was easier to hit them, right? Like,
or just faster.
Or faster, yeah. Like so you had more damage uptime. Or like, let's say you removed the 3x entirely, reverted it, and then buffed her to 6 to 50 damage, let's say, instead of like, you know, like doubled it. So like, yeah, she would go 100 damage per headshot, and she should still 2-tap a squishy, but she would be more consistent throughout the fight, hitting more shots. Because I actually think Kiriko is a character that is so high skill that 99% of players can't even play her very well. And anytime I've seen any like low level players play her, if they try the DPS playstyle, they suck balls. They're terrible. They're actually like useless. But if they heal bot, they're also useless because they could just play BAP on even Moira and heal bot the same way and get more value. So I feel like she's got so many things to her that I feel like you could maybe buff her damage, reduce the 3x, maybe make it 2.5, you know, make it so she, or even 2. I actually think 3. I think the 3x is just gimmicky, if I'm being honest. I think going back to the old style, like regular or 2x, buffing her damage or making it more consistent, more speedy, because you get games where I had Rack the other day get 8k damage on and 8k healing on BAP and was just flooring people, and they have a Kiriko who has 8,000 healing and 1,000 damage, and it's like they probably thought they were doing a lot, but they weren't doing shit because BAP was just so much better being able to do both, and it felt better for me to play with because like, oh, he's getting kills and I'm getting healed a bunch. This is awesome. Because I actually have really started to get really mad in my tank games because, like Sam said earlier, the coin flip of do you get the good Kiriko player? I actually end up getting a lot of games where either I have someone I'm like, holy shit, they're nasty, or I get the game where, wow, I haven't gotten healed once in the last 3.5 minutes. I'm gonna go bananas. So if it's me getting that, imagine all the metal rank players who are also getting those Kirikos, and they're not healing their team because they saw ML7 do a lot of damage. But you're not ML7. You can't do that. So it's like, I feel like there's like 4 things we got to look at for her, not even just one. But sorry, I went on for a while.
The irony, really quick, the irony of it all is like, even at the pro level, the best Kiriko players, they're not even really going for damage or flanks or anything. They're just heal botting because the whole meta is farm the Kitsuna rush as fast as you can, then spam that. That's the whole meta.
True.
So let me answer this for Flats real quick. So let's start with the order of operations of nerfing her, right? You have to nerf Kitsune Rush. Kitsune Rush is the best ultimate they've ever put in the game, ever, and it's not close. It is better than Rally. It is better than Window. It is better than literally any ult they've ever put in the game. I dare say better than Robert, okay? I know there's a lot of Robert fans out there, but it's better than good old Bob, too. So you have to nerf the values of that, even down to 30%. I think it would still be incredibly strong because it covers such a massive area. Number 2, I actually have seen way more Kirikos that are heal bots that are incapable of doing damage than DPS Kirikos. I've only actually seen one Kiriko who's DPSing too much. I also don't think they should change her damage. I kind of like her being an incredibly high skill ceiling support. I'm okay with them maybe changing it a little bit, but the thrill of hitting headshots, and I might be saying that as a player who's like actually able to hit that ceiling on the character, because believe it or not, my highest peak, I know everyone's like, oh, Doom player, oh, DPS. My highest peak is on Kiriko this season, actually. Like, I love playing Kiriko. It's my guilty pleasure. I think that she is the best support they've added to the game since Ana. They should be thrilled with her. And I think she just needs to be tuned, but she's really fun. The second thing you should probably look at is the invulnerability. I actually don't find the TP to be that oppressive. The reason why, I think maybe it's because she has to go to teammates. Like, there are some times where I'm like, oh, like, damn, she TP'd out, whatever. But I haven't had a moment where as a player, I'm like, oh my God, this dang TP. That really happens to her ult and her cleanse. So I would look at the ult first, then look at the cleanse. She's still too good. But I kind of like the way she does damage. I think they need to add more supports that are rewarding like that, and the burst impact of hitting those potential headshots I find to be really fun, though I would be open to them if it's clear that, hey, it seems like this gap is a little too much. It seems like this barrier to entry is a little too much for this character, because I'm not going to lie, it's very noticeable when you get a Mercy player learning Kiriko in your rank games, because they have literally, like, there was one game I had with False, and at the end of the game, our Kiriko had 500 damage, and he was like, bro, you have 500 damage, and he started flaming our Owl player on Sojourn for dying first. I was like, bro, like, you didn't throw a kunai all game. So, Flats, I think that would be, if the gap is too big, which it very, very much so might be, you can either increase the proc speed, which would increase her consistency, but in which case, if you do that, you need to nerf the damage multiplier and increase the base maybe to help her be a little bit more competitive. But I'm not sure. I'd have to look at her stats at low rank, because this is where you can look at stats where it's like, okay, if these players literally can't hit anything and this is too hard, like... But I really do enjoy the high... I love the high skill ceiling of the character. I think that's exactly why people are more okay with it, because if you are not a good player, you won't get away with it, and it won't violate what I always talk about, fair play. Fair play is the most important thing, the risk to reward, skill to reward, and I feel like her skill to reward ratio is generally fair, but her ult is just a little too over the top, and invulnerability's inability to interact, like, you can't interact with it, I think is just too good. And if you change those things, I think the character's in a great spot. But if they want to tune it down, lower the skill ceiling a bit, and raise the skill floor, I think if you do it a little bit, it's okay. But generally, the game is better when those two things are really spread.
Yeah, I think I want to take a second here to say the kudos to the devs, because we shit on them a lot in these podcasts. The majority of the heroes they released recently have been not easy to get value out of in anything but the highest level, right? So like Junker Queen, Sojourn, Kiriko, Echo, Sigma, BAP. None of these characters are good. Like, just go pick them in plat and you win. Like, they're just not, right? The last character like that was maybe like Moira, where it's like,
Right.
just pick her.
Oh,
But
OG Brig.
well,
but
even like release Brig, yeah, release Brig was giga strong, but like people still don't play her well at plat, right? Like they just don't. So like I understand the fears like with heroes being behind battle passes and future hero releases of like, well, at any moment they could release a hero that's just free farm in gold, and it's like, well, if you don't have him, it's GG, go next. But yeah, like they've done a really good job of not releasing a character that's just like free, right? Like you do have to be good at these guys. So I think kudos on that front, and hopefully that they don't break that system. The thing, like, I don't know if I'm bringing more problems than solutions. The thing that I find frustrating about the TP, like I've gotten used to her TPing out. It's when you're like trying to kill someone and out of nowhere a Kiriko flies in and Suzu's. That is what I find frustrating. Where I'm like, because you can like calculate a certain risk where you're like, I can kill this guy. I gotta commit a little bit, but I can kill this guy. And usually with like a different support, you're like, okay, well, are they in the sight line of their other healer, or like what's going on? With Kiriko, it's just literally like flying through walls, being Suzu underneath, and you're like, oh well, now I die then. Okay, that's my frustration because there's no way to see that coming. But I guess this counter is it's fucking fun to teleport through walls, and why shouldn't we have fun things? AVRL, have you got anything to add?
Not really. I just want to see like what direction they want to take Kiriko in the future, and I actually agree in the whole hero release thing in terms of like. People are probably a little bit more worried than they should be because it's still all these new heroes are pretty difficult to get value unless you're really good. So maybe the highest level, the much higher level of gameplay is when things are a little bit more concerning about like, well, if this guy doesn't have a certain hero. But then I also think most high level players probably have the battle pass or will be interested in getting those heroes anyway. I don't know. So wait and see is my position on Kiriko.
Mm-hmm. Any more thoughts on any of these guys before we move on? I think Sam wants to bring up some sneak nerfs. I'm going to bring that up next. But any more thoughts on this? Or sneak buffs?
On supports in general?
Just yeah, supports or just the patch in general if there's anything left unsaid.
The only other thing I would say is like, I think that, just to like tie back what we were saying before, I mean, I don't know what it looks like, but like the stats for supports is like supports is by far the role that needs the most help across all ranks, and like they need something. I'm wondering, if this is the way forward where characters are constantly like that high skill. And now I also want to point out really fast that Sojourn was that high skill when she was first put out. Then they actually buffed her because it was too high skill. And they made it easier, and it broke it for everybody else. I wonder if there's actually
the railgun size hitbox.
Yeah, I mean,
and alpha from alpha to beta, they buffed it.
Yeah, I mean, they. Well, was it? I thought it was beta 1 to beta 2. Was it not?
Regardless, it happened. I'm not sure when it.
They buffed it, then they nerfed it in live.
So in alpha, it was 1.0 size. Then they made it ramping, and then they nerfed it into like a more of a ramping size, and they buffed that or something, right? But I remember alpha release of Sojourn. I don't know if you guys remember. She was insane. Like
alpha
railgun,
was giga Sojourn.
It was bad.
Anyway,
but like I wonder if there is, and I don't get me wrong, I love high skill characters, but I wonder if, especially in that support role, if it's too high. They might not even get to really play Kiriko, and they don't actually get to experience that really cool headshot you're talking about. Because I know that feeling, the big dink, and like someone falls over. They don't get to experience that. They don't get to have that. So the support players, don't forget, during beta 1 and beta 2 were screaming because they felt the game was really bad. They might not have ever got the chance to actually have that good feeling, that cool feeling. And I wonder almost if that's the new way forward. Is support really going to start dying off, and really like people really don't want to play it almost like the tank role? And I, as someone who is a tank player in Overwatch 1, I think it's a really dangerous slippery slope to go down when you just start going, no, that's just the way it is, because that's how we got double shield, and that's how we got these boring tank metas. And nothing was worse as a tank player when you were forced to play those characters, and people would scream at you to play those characters all the time. And if you didn't play them, you were hard throwing and hard trolling, because they were the only thing that everyone was acceptable to play. I wonder if those middle to lower ranks and stuff like that, if you don't play something such as Moira, Lucio, Mercy, if you try to play these super duper high skill characters and you're not getting value, you're not going to have that fun that everyone else is. And it's like, there is, that's like one of the few things that I think that the casual players do deserve is the ability to play the game and have some fun with it. And I'm worried that if the skill ceiling is that high, that they literally can't get any value, that maybe there needs to be a middle ground somewhere where it comes down that I'm not going to say the floor. The character needs to get a little bit easier to play at a base level.
I mean,
but even at the higher level, it's still very rewarding and very fun.
You can. I think you can get a lot of value. Like I said, like the best way to play Kiriko, ironically, the pro level, is to just heal bot, which I think at the casual level should be pretty easy to do. Like you sit behind somebody, pretend you're Mario or Mercy, you just spam heals until you get Kitsune Rush, and ideally you drop some Suzus in there when appropriate.
But you don't get the damage part, which is like the fun of the character. You know what I mean?
What was their damage per 10 on average in now?
I'd have to check. I don't know off the top of my head. They do like to weave in damage when they can, but like by and far, like I measured success of Kiriko's and like win rates of teams, success of teams and team fights based on how quickly they were farming, and by far the teams and the Kiriko players that were focusing on heals would have like a 10 to 20% ult charge advantage, and that timing difference means everything for winning fights.
Yeah, because you can't kite it.
And it builds everyone else's ults, right? Like that's the benefit of it. It's like in the Kitsune Rush, everyone else is building it. Yeah, it's a tricky one because clearly she was not marketed as a heal bot hero, right? Like the whole marketing was, this is the support that the DPS will love to play. So it was like go shoot stuff.
That's true.
But it's fun too. It has me playing support a lot more. I won't lie. I like queuing support now, but again, I'm a player that's capable of outputting that damage. So I think Flats, that is a serious problem, which by the way, people don't remember in season 7, 8, the big issue was that no one was queuing support. Before role queue, that was the role that wasn't queued, and you've seen this shift a lot of times. So if it's too much, I think the easy solution would be to lower the multiplier at the highest level of play, increase the projectile speed. I'm not sure if the hitbox needs an increase. I think the prog speed would, and increase the base level damage. That way, I mean, you don't crush the skill ceiling and the skill floor together, but it does allow for players. The number one thing is the prog speed. I would say the prog speed is more important than the hitbox, because it doesn't matter if the hitbox is big. Like you see accuracy stats go up big time. Like you saw it for Hanzo. When he got that small increase, the average Hanzo accuracy is about 25%. He jumped up to 40 with their projectile increase there. It wasn't even a hitbox size. So lower damage at the ceiling, increase damage at the floor, increase prog speed, and that's how you can help lower ranked players get a little bit better at her. But because they aren't going to farm their ults very well in low level play, you just got to give them the option to put out damage to win. And that's the best way.
Or use I've never seen people use Kitsune Rush so ult so badly.
No one can use it in rank. No one knows.
People just throwing in Narnia.
They put it on the cart, it goes 1 inch, it just goes boom, it just doesn't go anywhere.
Like into a wall, or like I've seen people put it like literally where they're like next to their Rhine, and they put it right in the face, and the enemy team is just there, and they're like, well, we're not going to let you go in it. Like, what were you doing?
Yeah. So the best way I described it when teaching my players at UK, because I've been coaching at University of Kentucky this semester. I might play next semester, but I'll have to enroll first. The way I described Kitsune Rush to our Kiriko player Butters is I would tell him, I'd say, think of it like a spine, right? It's like the spine connects everything in the body. You want to put it where it covers the whole lane, so that not only can you fight where you are, but where does it extend to? What's your LOS where you extend? It's not just where it is, it's where you can reach by going in and out of it, and that's where you want to think about how you can use it and get aggressive with it. And that helped teams so much just improve with Kiriko. So big tip to you,
Sam,
Kiriko players at home. Yeah,
I got some stats for you. I pulled through some stats from the grand finals of the Overwatch League. So these might be super secret, probably not. I don't know.
It's probably 3K or more, 3K per 10 or more is my guess.
So the player I'm talking about is Fielder. He is the flexible player, the Kiriko player for the Dallas Fuel. They literally won the L Grand Finals, best team in the world currently. Kings Row, stats for Kiriko: Fielder, 14 limbs, 4 final blows, 2 deaths, 2,463 damage, which is only 7% of his team's damage, 11,562 healing, 59% of his team's healing. Here's the fun part: Chio, his Lucio player, 4,589 damage. So not quite double, but like 2,000 more damage. The Lucio player did 2,000 more damage than the Kiriko player. This is Fielder, maybe one of the best Kiriko players in the world. Here's another one, Coliseo. 12 limbs, 3 final blows, 3 deaths, 4,066 damage. That was 10% of her entire team's damage. 14,648 healing. That's 58% of the entire team's healing. The Lucio player, Chio, did 5,553. That's 1,500 more than the Kiriko player. The Lucio player did more damage than the Kiriko player. So while the Kiriko had double heal. This is what I'm saying. At the extreme highest level, the very best players in the world, they are all heal bots on Kiriko.
That's shocking. That's shocking to me because like mine is like 3.5k per 10 in ranked, but that's just ranked. So
I don't.
That's
so I'm hoping to you, huh? No, I'm just kidding.
My question is,
I still am getting 10k per 10 on heals.
AVRL, do you think that
fair.
would change if the ult changed? You think they would change that emphasis? Or I mean, they
Playstyle?
might not even
I
play.
think-
Yeah,
I think they might play a different hero.
I was gonna say, they
like-
might just stop playing Kiriko, but like
because
theoretically,
the problem is the damage is too inconsistent. Like you could be going for damage, but like, are you really hitting that many shots consistently, especially versus players that know how to position and dodge and move? Probably not. So
it
you
feels
get
like
much
as well
better
if you
value
were
healing.
if you were playing Kiriko as like I'm here to output damage with my kunai headshot. Is Zen not just better? I mean, obviously there's the other utility that Kiriko
It's the other
brings.
utility.
But like,
Zen's too
but I'm
punishable.
saying if that's what you're playing her for, right? If you're like, I'm picking her to output damage in the team, the Discord plus the Zen like much more frequent damage is just like better.
She
you
heals
just
more
pick
and she has
Bap?
better range healing. She has better
could
range
also pick
healing.
Bap.
People forget how easy it is to heal as range. That's why I love playing Echo with Kiriko. She just looks at me and I'm getting a bunch of like on a level burst healing without her having to aim, and it's way less pressure on the player, which is why it's so good. So that I'm actually blown away by that stat. That's really shocking.
Wouldn't BAP just be better then?
He
at that
can't
point?
heal at ranges consistently. That's the big difference, and that's why Moira is
That's
so
ultimate's way worse as well.
And his ult covers
True.
way less space. You just run it over. Like if you look at the amount of space that Window creates compared to Kitsune like it's not even close. Like because again, remember, it's not just about where you are. It's about because you can maintain the Kitsune buff when you walk out. So all you have to do is touch the Kitsune briefly, and you can take the effect out of the range.
If you Kitsune the window, the Kitsune wins almost every single time. The window never beats a Kitsune.
I thought the question was like if we needed more damage because we were talking Zen. I was saying like, wouldn't you just pick BAP because you get more damage?
Oh,
and
right,
healing?
right. I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
Oh, maybe,
Maybe.
probably. It depends on the comp.
Hmm.
Anyway, we've rambled on this for a long time.
Interesting theory crafting anyways. I've taken a lot of you guys' time, so I want to quickly ramp. Sam, you wanted to talk about stealth buffs.
Yeah, I just had a question about like what we thought. Like, is something going on here? Like, because they did this apparently in Warzone. There were a lot of stealth buffs and nerfs, and I'm sure you guys saw Dante's tweet talking about like a tracer buff. Like, have we confirmed if it's true or not? I generally am going to trust Dante's POV on tracer. He's probably not wrong. Do we even want to talk about it? Do we know? Like,
some people had said that it existed in the first beta. It's existed that long.
I don't
So
know.
yes,
I don't
Dante
think
basically
there's
has a
stealth
clip
buffs
on
and nerfs.
Twitter
I don't
where
think that they
where
would
he
do
feels that Dante has a clip on Twitter where he feels that Tracer's range got stealth buff. Basically, that just does more damage from further away. Basically, is that correct?
Yeah. I don't know. We can move on. But some kind of comment from Blizzard addressing whether or not that's true and or false would be nice, but I have no clue. And I just looked at, oh my god, that background just threw me through a loop as I just looked over and saw two flats.
You're just like, what the hell? Flats is looking at that
was really
chair real
confused.
bad.
I was like, wait, what?
I've taken over this podcast.
Okay, one quick word on, since we've been talking about the patch frequency. Flats, I'm going to take it to you first because it might just be that video itself, but there was a video where you were not happy at all with the delay on the patch, and I feel like you just weren't happy with the timing of the patch. How do you feel about this proposed cycle? I mean, the ideal is mid-season patch and then a post-season patch. Like, that's the cycle.
So here's what I think. I think that only once a month patches in a game like Overwatch isn't enough. I don't think it is. I think that small micro patches every 2 to 3 weeks is what's actually needed, and then one big one every season. What their current plan is like one big one every season, one small one in the middle. It just isn't enough. And this one, the reason I was so mad about it is because, one, we were kind of talked down to going into it. We were talked down to talking about win rates and pick rates, and this is we're talking like the 15th of October. There's a video I had about then when I go over the patch notes. It was kind of condescending. That's how I read it, and then it got walked back a little bit by Aaron on Twitter. It was hey, we are going to do some mid-season patches, because it basically sounded like they weren't going to do any mid-season balance patches. That's what the first article sounded like when it first talked about. We were like, whoa, this isn't what we were promised. So it was walked back on Twitter, nothing about Sojourn. And it was like, hey, why not Sojourn though? And everyone, don't forget, that's the honeymoon period. Everyone was still very happy with Overwatch balance-wise, yeah, Sojourn's not that fun. You know, it's kind of going a little bit rampant, but hey, you guys are going to make some changes? Sounds good. Then we get to the Halloween, patch area, and it's like, hey, listen, we're going to look to, do this, but, so like, we're actually having to push it back. Like, this is what the changes are. No Sojourn changes, though. And it's like, you're not making a change to the most dominant character, and you're pushing it back even further. It wasn't just like, it was all the way to the 15th from, I think the Halloween patch came out on the 25th of October, if I'm correct. So that was a 3-week push for your mid-season patch. So that gets pushed all the way back. Then we get there, and it's pushed again with no update on when the date is going to hit. Like, we ended up getting it 2 days later, like hours later, but there was nothing. Like, that was like something on the back end has been really bet wrong, but there was no talk about like when it's coming again. We were just told, yeah, it's getting delayed. That's it. And then another like 5 or 6 hours later, that's when we got the whole, hey, it'll come out in a couple days. It'll come out Thursday. But the point is, though, is like the communication is still lacking. And it's like, yeah, I got pushed back for errors in the 25th, but like at the same time, like it wasn't the best patch. It still should have had a little bit more. And the timing is really not that good on it. And it's like we finally get to there again to the second one. And it's like, oh, sorry, I got to push it back again. No updates on when. It's like at some point, you kind of start to lose me and lose my faith a little bit, because it's like Overwatch's balance has always been a problem. Like the game has been hard carried for the longest time by like the art team and now like content. What saves Overwatch from now on and keeps people playing, not only myself, but like the average player, is the content every season. Getting a new hero or a new map, or like, if they put more stuff out, like that Halloween update, the Halloween PvE was top notch, so much fun. That's the stuff that gets people to come back and going again. What kills your competitiveness of a game is letting it sit there and get no updates and just letting it fester over and over and over, because you want each season to have an identity. And it's like, well, season 1's identity is Sojourn one taps everybody on cooldown. Get used to it. And it's like, I feel like Overwatch is one of those games that you can't let sit there for that long. And I don't know if anybody remembers, but like 3 years ago, Jeff and the Overwatch team made a commitment to the player base and said, hey, we understand we don't patch fast enough. We're going to work towards getting to balance patches every 2 weeks. And so every 2 weeks it would announce what it is, and then next week it would come out. So realistically, it was like 3 weeks. But eventually, after a few months, we got to that, and we got that period for about 2 to 3 months. And the game was like not bad. And that was around that October time.
That was October.
That was when we got October, and the game was good. And then you know what happened? They went, nah, actually, we're good.
No, we're
not doing that anymore.
We buffed May, Brig, Sim.
And then they let off the gas, and they said, we're
left it. And we were like,
later. They let off the gas and want to work on Overwatch 2. Sorry, we can't do it anymore. It's taking too many resources to patch the game or whatever, and we're going to work on Overwatch 2. And then guess what everyone did? Everyone, myself included, all said, you know what? They're going to go work on Overwatch 2. Yeah, it sucks they're leaving the game to abandon it. It's the worst decision they could have did. They even apologized for it later. They know it was a bad decision. We're not going to dwell on the past, but we can't forget that period was when it was good. And the constant updates keeps the game fresh, not only for old players, because not old players, casual players, because they barely read fucking patch notes. They can't tell the difference if the Genji got 1 less damage on it or not. They're just going to go, oh, there's less Genjis in my game, or I'm dying less to Genji. Pog. And for people that play all the time, they're going to feel like the meta's changing constantly. They're going to feel like things are fresh. You get both worlds, and they both be good. And I think that it doesn't even have to be to the point where everything needs to be perfectly balanced all the time. It just needs to be changing quickly. And I think things that are very blatant, like Sojourn, need to be addressed and can be tuned. But it's like even a small nerf, like I think you touched on it earlier, even something tiny, like to go with the Genji one, just to acknowledge, hey, we see it. We see the problem. Like we'll give you a little something. It might not be enough. It probably won't be enough. Then people can go, well, they nerfed her, but it's not enough. But at least they fucking nerfed her. They tried something. They did a little something. I think that the mid-season and the 1 season is not enough. I think that there needs to be 2 mid-seasons. I don't think it works the same way as like Apex. Apex has a thing where it's like every half season they change maps and they make a bunch of balance changes. The game works fundamentally different than Apex does. We don't have the variety of a game like Apex where you can try 5 or 6 different heroes and then 5 or 6 different guns. You got one character, with one set of damage and one set of cooldowns, and then you can change those characters, but all of those characters, they don't change for such a long time. It's like the meta doesn't change, the way the game feels doesn't change. It doesn't have the variety I think other games does. So it needs to be updated and patched faster to keep it fresh, to keep it moving. Because if you're talking about the lower ranked players, they're going to pick Reinhardt no matter what. So like, don't be afraid to make a change to Roadhog within 2 weeks, because he's really kind of like running rampant up top, and it looks like it's not being a good time up there. And on the lower ranks, it looks like he's surviving a little long. Well, fuck it, we'll change the cooldown on a hook by 1 second. A little something. You know what? Is it great? Nah, not really. Then you can change it again at the big next season patch, but it's faster. It keeps it fresh. It constantly gets people guessing. Because before the Overwatch League meta came out, like everyone was kind of guessing. Like Zarya was strong, but it was like, wait, well, Winston seems pretty good, but like Diva seems pretty good too, and Sigma seems pretty good. And it was like this rock paper scissors thing was happening where everyone was just counter swapping constantly. But now that we saw what Overwatch League plays, we see what contenders playing. There's no patches. There's nothing that's changing it. Everyone now knows what to pick, and it's like, I must play Sojourn, and it's like it's boring. Overwatch is a game that needs to be updated fast, and it needs to be faster than where it's at. And I was more mad about the delays than anything.
Can I ask hypothetical off that? Like, what if the game, hypothetically, what if the game was in a really good state? Would you still want it to be patched out of that? Because in some ways, the philosophy of patching is patching towards a state of ideal balance, right? But if we are just kind of throwing out patches every X amount of weeks, whatever number that is there a level where you just start patching for the sake of patching, even if the game is quote unquote balanced? Because I would have said
it'll never be balanced.
But I would have said we've had certain states of the game that felt really, really good. And I'm sure you could name a couple times, when you like maybe the October era of the game, you're like, wow, the game is great, right? At that point, would you wanted them to have come back and done something there? Because like the game's good, right? I mean,
so I agree, but it's not possible anymore because we're getting content now. So it didn't work. So October worked because we got Echo 6 months beforehand, and then they were starting the process of getting fast patches off of a character from 6 months ago. But if we're getting content every other season, we're getting a new character. When a new character is introduced, it's fundamentally impossible to keep the game balanced the same way as it was a few months ago. And all the time before that, before Echo, was like a year. So we spent this whole year building up like what balance is before Echo. Then Echo hit, and then we accelerated the balance patches. I don't think it's fundamentally possible for that to happen.
I'll say it like this, then. I will agree based on that, because I felt like, again, mid-season madness this year, which was, I don't remember when that was, sometime around the middle of the year. The meta I felt was pretty damn good. This was beta 1. Obviously, this is mostly applicable to like pro play because we didn't really have the game out at that stage, and I don't think people could really. Maybe you guys could play the game in the beta 1. I can't remember. And then patching out of that, going into the Jungle Queen stuff in beta 2, I was like, holy shit, this is so much worse. We just killed one of the best metas we've ever seen for this. But that was because the new hero came out and completely shifted the way the game was played. So I guess I agree that like when new content comes out, it will just have that level of impact. But I will say that if we're going to have some quite regular patches coming on through, I think each of the patches are probably not going to be equal in some ways as well. But some patches might be really small, and I'd be okay with that. Like if the meta is in like a pretty okay state, I only want to see some really small tweaks. I don't want to see any big stuff coming on through, because I still believe in the optimistic idea of reaching some level of like ideal balance state. And if we're close to achieving that, I don't want to just suddenly throw that out the window for the sake of balancing, because you got to balance, and throwing some big stuff out there. Just like minor tweaks is okay for me.
I think they already said that that's what they're going to do, though, at the beginning of every season. So, like, every season is going to be some major balance. We don't know what that's going to look like till next season. So, I agree with you, though. I agree with you. What I'm more mostly talking about is like the frequency of the mid-season balance patches.
Yeah,
like,
maybe we could have more. Sure.
Those small patches need to happen more often because it keeps the game fresh. Even small little tweaks, like little things, like even a second or two off a cooldown, or 1 or 2 points of damage off of a character in the mid-season to keep it moving in those quick successions, I think is the key. But the big ones, I agree with you. I think that, like, let's say season 3 will be a good example, because there won't be like a new character, right? So let's say season 2 hits some perfect meta, and then in season 3 they make this crazy balance changes and break the whole thing. Oh, I'm with you on that then. Like, that's bad. That's dumb. But it also, I don't know what their philosophy is at this point, because they've told us like that, like they're kind of wanting to make every season have its own feel. But
Right.
for us right now, that means Sojourn just one taps you for the next 60 days. Like,
You know
is
what
that what we want?
You
I don't
what
know
they
if we're
should
like
do?
what.
Just do it like Warzone does, and you have there's 2 big patches, but after each big patch, like you have your mid-season patch, which is very big. The start of the season introduce something crazy, and then a week or 2 later, you have like tweaks, and then pretty much after every big patch, a week or 2 later, you have tweaks that could have a range of medium changes to small changes, and then the game flow, the season still has an identity. And that's what this season was missing, where, okay, even if you slightly nerf Sojourn or medium nerf Sojourn, this season's identity will still be Sojourn. Everyone's going to remember it as Sojourn. She's still going to dominate, and that's the easy answer. So I think Flats answered the question perfectly, though, about like, oh, well, what if the game's in a good spot? I agree, you don't have to do anything crazy. That's when you add a new character, and then you kind of rinse, repeat, and that's how you keep the content cycle fresh. I think that's the best case scenario, because it can't be perfect, but it can be damn close, and we love chasing perfection, because what is life? I love chasing perfection. I'm sure anyone else who loves games loves to do it too, and that's the fun of it all. That's the thrill of the chase.
I don't know if we're ready to talk fully about Sojourn yet. I know that's the hot topic, and it's the one that a lot of people bandwagon on as well. But it's like if I was to give some real benefit of the doubt and hand Olive Branch over the devs, I don't know if they fully figured out what way to nerf Sojourn, which is probably the real reason why she didn't get nerfed in the latest patch, because I know you guys are saying like, oh, just give her a small tweak, but I think there is some danger in like, oh, you just throw something out there for the sake of throwing something out there, unless like if you don't actually have the real solution just yet, because then I don't know, you kind of have to walk back some of that stuff. I don't know, it gets a little. I'm not on board with any sort of idea. I'm not saying you guys are saying this, but like I know some people just want to see any nerf. I'm not on board with any idea of just like balancing for the sake of balancing. I think they're trying to work on a real solution. I think Sojourn's just a complicated character to reach a solution for. Some people might not think that, but I do.
I mean, maybe I'm saying this is just like a player been playing like a high, like been playing for so long, but like I even think that like something like how long she holds charge, like that isn't something that fundamentally changes her ability to earn kills. It's just how long she holds the rail for. Like, I almost wonder at
the
what
game will
point.
still be revolving around one shots. I mean, cool. She maybe
It's a small tweak, though. It's a small tweak. It's like it's just something
think
like,
it
hey,
fixes
does this make a difference? You know.
The other thing I want to add to this.
I don't think it really alleviates people's problems. People still complain about getting one shot by Sojourn, though. That's the thing.
The other thing
Well,
as well, this adds to this. Sorry to chime in, guys. Is that we've often in the past had small patches, and we get annoyed sometimes as well, where we're like, oh, this is like, well, power creep in reverse, right? Where it's like, oh, this isn't enough, and then you're going to give him another 2 nerfs, and then they'll be really bad. Or, you know, the other way, obviously, is how we got power creep, where it's like, oh, you gave him a little buff, but it's not enough, and then 3 buffs later, they're really good. So people might get annoyed at the smallness of the patch too, right? Potentially.
But that's what they've already told us they're going to do. Like they've already communicated that we will get one big balance patch at every season and one small mid-season patch. And what I argue is it shouldn't be 1. It should be maybe 2, or if things are really fucked, 3. But I think 2 is probably the sweet spot, because I don't think every 2 weeks is going to happen. I think every 3 weeks is doable. And if every season's 9 weeks, you can fit 2 in there, no problem. So I think that 2 would happen. And I don't disagree, but I also think at some level we have to understand, like, where do we draw the line between being able to be criticizing, like, listen, like, you know, this is not okay, like this needs to go at some level, as opposed to giving them the benefit of the doubt. And I think that personally, I think that there's a fair ground of something small is better than nothing at all. And
how about this? I will say this though, I guarantee if they did something small, even if it's the real charge, whatever, nerf, the conversation we will be having today, and probably the rest of the Twitter sphere, whatever we're having today, is instead of like, oh, they didn't nerf Sojourn, it's, oh, they gave her a slap on the wrist. And people would still be angry, people would still be saying whatever they're saying. We'd be, the 4 of us would be sitting here right now being like, I can't believe they only slapped Sojourn on the wrist. That's what we'd be talking about right now.
True.
That's true.
And then
But
they
that's what you
eventually
sign
have
up
to.
for. That's what you sign up for, though. Like, at the end of the day, it's your job to pursue this, right? And you understand when you walk in the door that it's never going to be perfect and that people are always going to criticize, but your job is to give it your best shot you can and learn from it as you can go on. And that's where I do sympathize.
I think the best shot's coming.
The game devs. Yeah, I know. I agree. And look, this is coming from one of the guys who's the most critical of what they've done over the years. But, you know, as somebody who loves games, and maybe this might be my personal opinion, I could be totally wrong on this, but that thrill and that desire to chase that perfection and it is a tough job. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not, but you should always be looking to do more. You should never be satisfied. And personally, if
I don't think that. I don't think anyone's satisfied though. I don't think anyone's satisfied. I think
well, that's fair. That's fair. It's the concept.
I think the recognition of Sojourn being strong is there. It's just like, I legitimately think they don't know how to nerf her, and the reason I believe that is because I think she's a complicated hero to nerf. Because I don't think you quote unquote fix Sojourn and get rid of most of the problems until you remove the one shot. But if you remove the one shot, her identity changes. She's like a sort of different hero, right? So it's a very delicate thing to touch. You either make her feel really shitty, and her one shot doesn't come very often at all, and she just becomes like a really bad hero because that's like her entire identity, or you put the power somewhere else. And I don't know, like if you keep the one shot but you nerf everything else, I think she just feels like shit. But I think the only way you really do anything is you have to somehow change the way the one shot works and put the power elsewhere. It's just a very complicated thing to look at, and no slap on the wrist will solve the issue, because then people, as I said, everyone's just going to complain that she got slapped on the wrist, and oh, I'm still dying in one shot to her. It's still not fun.
And then when they eventually change the thing that is the problem, and but the thing is, when they eventually change the thing that is the problem, then again it's like the power creep or the reverse power creep, power nerf creep. It's like, oh, you dumpstered her main problem, but also reduced a bunch of other things about her, so now she's like giga bad, right? It's like, then you end up in that world.
Yeah, I still think she'd be good without her one shot, by the way.
I agree.
I think her mobility,
in some ways,
and her mobility and her ability, like she could still burst somebody down by getting a couple right clicks off and then getting the body shot. Like she wouldn't be as good. Maybe she could only one shot in her ult. I don't want to get into the speculation of it all, but like I still think because of her mobility and her slow and how she could fit in the comps and her ability to output damage in general, she would still be a good hero. I think she'd still be better than Soldier and Kree. Or Cass, sorry. I think she'd be better.
I guess the idea that like AVRL's talking about, and I'm also trying to devil advocate.
No, sorry. To be clear, I get what you're saying. I kind of diverted away.
Is that like is that like?
But
3
you are
weeks,
right. You are right.
Is that 3 weeks is like if something is a problem, like something is problematic, 3 weeks is not really enough time for the devs, realistically speaking, to be like, we figured the solution, right? Because if they could see that quickly, like, okay, we can perfectly fix the identity of Sojourn while doing this, would they not have done that earlier? Like, I
disagree.
I fundamentally disagree with that too.
You disagree?
It's your job to know. It's your job to know. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's your job to know. Absolutely. And if you don't know, then I'm sorry. I can't. When there are pro players out there who I know could bring good solutions to the table, and say, let's walk the hypothetical. If you don't, it is your job to know. There's nothing else to say.
What are some good solutions? What are the pro solutions?
The pro solutions, I think I think reducing the time that she keeps the charge from 8 seconds to like literally 2 seconds. I don't think she should be able to hold her rail shot like a Widowmaker, because in scrims and high level play, there's this game of chicken that goes on because the tank has peaked the Sojourn for half a second and she hits one shot, which then resets the delay cooldown by 8 seconds. So now you're not playing against a Soldier 76 type character. You're playing against a Soldier 76 type character that is also a Widowmaker. Right? I don't think that needs to be in the game at all, because low-level players don't get value from that at all. It's only at high-level play.
Right. They nerf the time you can hold the charge. She still one-shots one next. Doesn't fix her.
That's a starting point.
I want to add as well.
You don't know that, though, until it happens.
Yeah, but can you keep ping-ponging with the character? Can you keep making like huge changes to the character, but oh, that didn't work?
I wouldn't say that's a huge change. I think that's a slight tune. And that's perfect for a mid-season patch. Right? Like, I'm not... Like, you don't have to do the drastic thing. Right, I agree. Like making these mid-season drastic changes can get risky, but that's a simple one where it addresses. Because again, we talk about the problem of like Sojourn only being good at high ranks. That is a problem that is only happening at high ranks, and high-level players understand that. There is that moment where, as a squishy, you're like, oh, she has rail, and just winning 1 or 2 fights a game like that will add a minute off the time bank. That's a lot of time of like resetting. Like that's consistent, right? So that's a really good, easy adjustment that wouldn't be devastating to the character. It wouldn't change the core character fundamentally. So like I kind of have a general rule of thumb when you look at game balance and stuff like that is, if you don't want to fundamentally dumpster a character and how it operates in the game immediately. You want to take a look and see if you can tweak around the values without dumpstering the core fundamental. In this case, you don't dumpster the one-shot fundamental, but you nerf the uptime, you nerf the consistency. And nerfing consistency in Overwatch, which is consistency has been the best thing in the game since it came out. So you look to nerf the consistency. If the consistency then doesn't change the fact that this hero is just demolishing people, then you look at the fundamentals, right? So you start with the consistency and then you look at the fundamentals. And this has been a general rule of thumb that I've kind of seen in this kind of game genre for a very long time. So like personally, that would be the easiest change that I would do, because again, you have to be careful. And this is where they were right, where people on Twitter weren't giving them credit, where they're saying, well, we don't want to gut the hero in low level play. Okay, well, I can assure you, if you change it like this, there's no gold player holding that railgun for 8 seconds. They're not doing it, right? So, but every high level, like Cyrus is on the other team on Sojourn, and he's holding that thing for a minute. Exy was farming us in comp, farming us. So was, dude, there was a game I went up against Aspire. He went 37-0 on Li Zhang Tower, that little rat, right? And he would just sit on the corner, shoot my 3,300 Winston player, and keep his charge. And the second anyone pinks, dink. And it's just like, okay. So if you remove that, you at least get back into the core flow of the game, in which case you have the chance to contest it, which would then blow the door wide open just for opportunities to contest.
I think that change should go through, but I'm just saying I don't think it really solves the problem, and I think we go back to complaining about Sojin within 24 hours.
Yeah, you're right. There might still be complaints, but it would be better, and I think that's better than nothing. And again, no one's ever going to be satisfied. I'm not trying to say people would ever be satisfied. I'm not disagreeing with you. There's always going to be discourse. There's
I'm not
always
saying we
going to be
shouldn't do it.
conversation.
I agree we should do it,
you.
but I'm just saying, like, until you fix Sojin, the complaints don't stop. There's no, like, this whole bandwagoning on Sojin doesn't end.
But it would just go to the next character. Like what Sam's saying is, like, no matter what, it will just go to the next. Like, let's say you just nuked Sojourn and something else became, like, was Cassidy all of a sudden became the best character in the game. People are still going to call for Cassidy nerfs or call for changes. That will never change. People will always want that to happen. Like, that will continue. Like, people will always call for that no matter what. So it's better to change it at least in the list a little bit than to not change it at all.
Or we're kind of going in circles here, fellas.
Yeah. I also think.
I don't know what we're saying.
I think we're getting into too much of the nitty gritty of like Sojourn per se. I think you know. Okay. Go ahead, Avril.
What I'm saying is just to make sense again, because it does sound like we're going in circles, and I'm sorry, I think I might have dragged us there.
I actually appreciate your perspective. So thank you.
What I'm trying to say is, like, I'm not saying we shouldn't make minor nerfs, minor changes. What I am saying is the reason why some of the stuff hasn't come through is I think she's a complicated hero to balance to get to the ideal state that we want it to be at, and because of that, it's taken them a long time to figure out what the fuck you're supposed to do to put in this the place she's supposed to be. Maybe you're right. Maybe she should have at least had a small nerf along the way. But I think to give the devs a little bit of benefit of the doubt, they're trying to like put in the actual solution that you know, you'd have to wait till the next season for.
Yeah,
hopefully
I think
it's a solution that works.
I think I try and give the devs of any game, not just Overwatch, like as much benefit of the doubt as possible. So I can totally understand that, like, that's why I said, like, maybe 3 weeks, like, say, fix every problem that comes up is unfair. But I think it's not unfair to ask them to try, is my now real opinion.
They've nerfed Sojin so many times. They have tried.
They have tried, but I also don't think there's
times since release.
I think there's a reluctance to sometimes walk back. Like, obviously, you know, I think Blizzard like to find the right solution in many ways rather than, like, tweak. I think tweaking is good in a way, if nothing else, because I think it encourages the player perception to change. And I think that's something to be valued, is like, because we've seen many times characters like just get changed, and that alone encourages people to pick or not pick them, and then later it turns out they weren't that bad, or maybe some X character was way better than people realized, right? So I feel like if nothing else, just trying the balance patch, even if it is a minor change, is like, might just get people to be like, can we stop playing Sojourn now? And then they realize something else is really good. Even if they don't feel like this is the perfect solution, but I do sympathize. I don't think it's
this whole thing of like, oh, look at top 500, it's all Sojourn plays. I guarantee you that remains even with this rail nerf that you suggest. I guarantee that's still there.
It should still be good. Yeah, it should still be good.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, it's like a slight band-aid, but it doesn't have the intended effect.
I think we're arguing different things. I agree with you that this will happen. My whole shtick with it was that, like, it's about setting the message that, like, for one, again, my personal gripe is like, you're doing this to Genji, but nothing to Sojourn. That was my only gripe. I'm not going to go on about too much, because I think we kind of agree and disagree at the same time, and then I think it comes down to like our personal opinions on stuff. So like at the end of the day, we both think what we think, and that's good. Like, it's good to have difference of opinion.
And ironically, this is probably what it looks like in the dev team, right? Like, this is like Avril is suggesting one thing, and then the other guy's like, no, but that won't. Or Sam's suggesting one thing, and Avril's like, that won't stop it. That she's still gonna be good. We got to find something else, right?
I think it would blow it wide open. I think it would blow it open personally. I think it would. You would see a lot.
And maybe Blizzard take the stance of like, we can't open experiment with our game to that extent. Like we can't. We got to know before we put it out. Maybe that's. I'm again. I don't want to speak for the devs, but maybe that's their POV. Like they don't want to. They'd rather be seen to do nothing than to do the wrong thing, perhaps.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on any of this, like patch frequency or anything like that, before we kind of jump to quick fire questions, and just a couple left. Flats, you haven't said anything. Well, I just want to check you got anything to add?
No, I think I'll end it off. I actually think both are right.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think both are right. It's just this is probably, and I think you've also nailed it. This is probably what happens in the dev team. Difference opinion.
Yeah, and even like Sam said, get pro opinion. Well, even the pros don't agree, right? Like X pro thinks this, X pro thinks that. Like so, it's difficult. It's difficult. Okay, so now we're gonna head to just quick fire questions. So chat, these are the questions that you guys put into the Discord server. I will ignore some because they're not relevant and they're just about things that we haven't talked about. Map pools is something we haven't talked about, but I think is relevant here. Are you guys getting sick of these maps at the moment?
Yep.
That was quick.
Yeah, I mean, just feel free to chime in. This is a free for all. We're just gonna go free for all now, so just chime in.
It's taking content out. Like, why? Like, it's ass. Like, this game's existed for 6 years. We're not a brand new free to play game. We should have so much content, and we're adding on the content, and we're not. We took away old content and just was like, oh, here's a little bit of new stuff that'll come back later. You'll enjoy it when it comes back. Trust us, you will. And then what happens next season? Like, Eichenwald gets taken out, and now I hate it.
Is there any downside to having like the entire map pool open? Would that be like too broad?
The downside would be you're not getting practice on the maps.
It's not that there's a downside to having everything in the game. It's that there's a very minimal upside of that.
Right.
You know what? I take it back. I take it back. At my level of play, at Flats level of play, top 500, people can learn the maps better. But who am I joking? No one in gold is gonna memorize. Like they didn't learn how to play Volskaya for 6 years. Okay, I'm still telling my GM teams to not hold the low ground on the point. No one's gonna learn. It's better for the content to probably open. I thought for a second, I was like, well, I have been learning rollouts of the map, but I also have to remember like that's a very small percentage of the player base, and the reality is we need content.
The only thing I could think. Sorry.
The only reason I asked the question is if there's no downside, then they should just open the whole thing up.
Well, I think there is one. I think they want to make changes to the maps for 5v5, like how they did with like Gibraltar. Like certain points, there's like on second point, there's like on the top left high ground on attack, there's like boxes there now that never used to be there. Maybe they're making some changes to like the other maps to make them more 5v5 friendly. But I think that's something we should do as we go. That's not something that should be. We have to wait another season to play a map.
Here is one downside. There's a bunch of new players, and a bunch of new maps is overwhelming. And having to play a different map every single game might be too much. And you probably just want to learn what an actual map is like what actually even happens on a map. Because remember, you also might not get to see all of a map in a game of Overwatch, right? And unlike many other games, you might only get to play first point. Like, I swear there's people who played the entire betas and never saw the second and third point of Midtown. Because it was just like they just never left point A, right? So
maybe that's something you only do in Fatui?
Fatui. I was like, for a second, I was like, what is the Fatui? But no, not.
But isn't there like a brand new player experience? Why not just have a map pool on the brand new player experience?
That's just what Sam said.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good compromise. I think that'd be a good compromise.
Because then at that point, you could actually like, you could almost like make sure that certain players play certain maps as they're going, and it's like, they get to play everything.
Yeah, no, I think, and I think as well, like it shouldn't be in permanently. Even if they are worried about new players being overwhelmed, then that should be like a temporary thing. But then like eventually, they should just bring all the maps in. But yeah, I think we're not the target audience for that, perhaps, unless they are going with the argument of like, you must train on the maps and get really good. That's what we want. But that's a cap. Push. We reassessed our opinions on push. Happier,
yes.
more. Yes, Sam.
I like it more. The
Esperanza.
You almost got it.
Yeah.
Esperanza.
The Portuguese map is fire. I think the big mistake that Coliseo, New Queen Street have is when you round the second corner, there's a high ground to hold you on, and that's just not fun. That's just not fun for the team. Well, it's not awful. I just play Echo and I roof surf on them and I drop on them from behind. But if you don't play a flyer, it can be very oppressive to get that card around. So I think that they should design more push maps to be like the Portuguese map instead of Coliseo. They're not. I don't think they're bad maps, but I definitely feel the frustration of trying to push through those compared to the Portuguese map, which just is very fluid and beautiful and fun.
I prefer it when push maps it's easy to make the first checkpoint cap, which I think is the case on Esperanza. Like, I think the other two maps, especially Coliseo, is super hard to make a cap happen. So whoever gets a cap, I mean, that's a dub. I have warmed up to push a lot. I think as people figured out how to play push more, and as we've kind of let it just sink in a bit, it's been better. But I still think there are fundamental issues with push that don't get solved unless we redress the game mode in a big way. Just in terms of snowballing, just in terms of when a team sets a certain amount of distance and how much backtrack you have to go for the other team to come back. I mean, it's just it can be very one-sided blowouts. I feel a lot more on push than other maps, personally.
Flats?
My opinion hasn't changed. It's the same one. I think that push will be... I think push is fine. I think as people learn how to play it, it's going to be better. Coliseo is ass. Esperanza is good. New Queen Street could use a little bit of tweaking, but overall, though, I think that the game mode is a million times better than 2CP, and people that think 2CP is better is survival bias.
100%. I can't believe we've gaslit ourselves into wanting 2CP back in a serious way. Like, I'm down to experiment with what it'd be like in 5v5, but I can't believe we gaslit ourselves to be like, it was better than push. Nah, fam. It really, really wasn't. Okay, 3 years, 3 heroes a year, is it enough?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? AVRL?
Yeah.
You thought about that.
Well, I think the free-to-play market demands just serious, you just need content. But I think for a game like Overwatch, I like the fact that our heroes have a lot more attention, a lot more complex in design, have a lot more, love behind it as well in terms of all the lore and all the extra art and everything behind it. So I don't mind taking the time to get 3 good heroes out of here.
Yeah, personally, I agree as well. Yeah, go ahead, Slats.
No, you go. You got it.
I was gonna say I think there's a too much there's a thing is too much content, too many heroes, and you're just not even sure what game you're playing anymore. You're just well, last week I didn't log in and now it's a new thing, and I'm confused. This is a new meta, especially for the new player. Again, remember, we're already worried about what it's gonna be like a year from now when there's too many releases and players haven't caught up. But imagine if you're releasing even more heroes and someone stops playing for a while, or someone's a new hero, you're in that kind of paralysis that League of Legends and Dota suffer from, where they can't attract new players because they've got so many heroes to learn that people are that's intimidating, I don't want that. So yeah, I think that's scary.
Sounds like why they have the free-to-play, or the not free-to-play,
the first time
player experience.
But even then, that got to end at some point, right? And then it's then you're back in the world of 50 heroes or something.
Yeah, I wonder if actually they'll add characters to it over time. Eventually will it become 75 quick play games 1, and they'll add on Kiriko and Junker Queen, and and Sojourn and stuff like that. I wonder if that'll end up happening.
I mean, that's annoying as well. Imagine being a first-time player. It's I can't play ranked until when? You know what I mean? It's
true.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little much. It's bro, I got to do 200 games before ranked. No, I'm good.
Not wrong, not wrong. But it's something to consider at least. But I think the reason I'm fine with 3, which I actually think it's going to get a little spooky around season 3. It's going to be I think that's when us as creators are going to see our first slump. Is things are going to come down because maps don't get people too excited. It's a map, yeah, but it's a 50-50 shot with Overwatch if it's a good map or a bad map. And it in the later years it trended towards the bad end. I will say Overwatch 2, there's some very good maps, but we can't forget we had Paris as our last Overwatch 1 map, and that was interesting.
I thought it was Havana.
I thought it was Paris.
Was Havana.
It was Havana.
It wasn't
Same
Lana.
thing.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
Lana
they-
wasn't that
both
much
bad.
better to write
Both
home
bad.
on anyways.
Yeah.
Both bad.
But point is, though, we have PvE at some point, and
Ooh.
that will be interesting because
Oh, I'm so
you know
ready.
what happens. What happens if it's like a like they keep adding more stuff, almost like Destiny type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, what happens then? Like, like what if like PvE is the type of thing that holds us over in the seasons that we don't get a new character? It's like, now we really have content. Like I feel like like content wise, we are chilling. We're fine. I am not worried at all on the content end. It's just like skins. You think you're gonna get good skins in Overwatch? Do you even have to think about that? Of course you are. But yeah,
I gotta
that's
say,
why-
like people might want need to hold their expectations on PvE because there's no way they can release PvE at the same cadence as heroes. Like it takes so much more effort to release good PvE than it is to release one hero. I think.
But is the
Not to
team?
mention,
What's the size of the team, though? That's also the question.
regardless of the size of the team, I mean, if you have a bigger size of the team, you can release heroes quicker as well. The point is like the amount of depth in PvE content, like even to do anything close to like a Retribution or a Storm Uprising kind of deal, which is only one mission. I mean, that's a pretty big undertaking, way bigger undertaking than designing any hero.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So-
All I was saying is that the attention of the team, like how much of the proportion has been given to PvE versus PvP, right? Like, I'm not
Yeah,
saying
no
that
idea.
they're gonna
No
pump
idea.
it out. I'm not saying they're gonna pump it out, but I do think at the moment probably a large number of the dev team is working on PvE kind of stuff.
I'd agree with that.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, the other thing about the map thing is like unlike Apex, where it's like everyone plays the map all the time. In Overwatch, you release a new map and it's maybe one of the 12 maps or something that you're playing. So it's not even if it's new content, it's like not even that frequently encountered new content. So sad. Okay. Some quick fire questions now that I think can be answered quickly. Do you think map should be gatekept by rank? I don't think so. No, I don't think that's a good idea.
Huh?
I don't think anything should be gatekept by rank, really.
Absolutely not.
Like unlock it as you go by rank. No, I don't think. Someone earlier suggested balance via ranks. No, that's not a good thing either. Like
Absolutely not.
because then you're like learning a different game, and even though that's technically kind of what's already happening, but still you're just like, well, at what rank can you? No, it's no, not viable, not feasible.
That's got to be one of the worst things ever. If you cannot balance by rank, every rank will have a different. Imagine playing Mercy, and then the next rank she's just a different hero, because she's balanced differently. It's like what? Like you don't even have a consistent experience through the game. No, there's no shot.
No, yeah, it's not. But that's why we're quickly going. Are tanks too strong across the board? Perhaps the reason Sojourn is strong is because she's one of the few heroes that doesn't get punished for shooting tanks.
I actually think tanks are too weak. That's my hot take. Sorry,
Says
not
the
all,
tank
but
player.
like most. I think like
Mhm.
never mind.
No, we get you. Sam,
Give
you
every
say-
tank 100 more armor.
Unironically, I actually
Well,
think,
that
like,
was the
half
beta one.
Tank, I think actually, unironically, half the tank roster needs buffs. I think Doom, Queen, Rhine.
Yep.
I'm
Ball?
not. Ball,
Ball, yeah.
absolutely. Oh yeah, Ball. Oh my god, I forgot Ball even exists because Sombra exists. Diva, I'm a little out on right now, but I'm wondering if Diva's gonna be like falling behind a little bit, other than as a Winston counter. In Zarya, I think if like Hog is the new standard, Zarya would actually need a small rebuff. I think the double nerf of her duration plus the time, like the cooldown, is actually almost too much. But that's my hot take. Is I think Zarya is actually tanks overall need to be a little bit stronger.
Sam?
The problem is, like, it depends on what style of play the tank fits into and what they're capable of doing, right? The reason why Diva might fall off and Hog is good is because, like, if you want to answer Hog, like, you either play the dive comp to avoid the Hog altogether, or you pick Sig, who could actually damage the Hog whilst protecting his team with the shield on the right map. So I wouldn't say necessarily that. It really
What is
depends
Hog
on
good
style of the
against?
game. What is Hog good against? He's good against anything that's punishable by excessive amounts of damage and anything that he can easily hook. So I would just say Hog kind of fits. The hard part with tanks is like it really depends on how they fit into the meta. Like again, like I've said this forever, supports are what define the meta. So like if you want to make certain tanks good, it really depends on what heroes are good, right? So like I think in order for Ball to be good, you'd almost have to have a Flyer Mercy meta to where Ball could just kind of roll around the map on his own. It's a tough thing to answer, but I think there are definitely some tanks that are just objectively bad. Like when we say tanks are OP, it's only certain heroes in the role. So I think that I kind of agree with Flats that certain tanks probably will need to get buffed. I think Ball is definitely one. I cannot believe I'm saying this. I think Ball is definitely one of them. I think Doomfist should have some changes looked at for him. I think Ryan is another one of those characters where, like, again, Ryan can't do both at once, right? But Hog can like easily tank and go back to doing damage in really quick intervals, right? Winston can create space and do damage at the same time because by creating space, he's also has the opportunity to do his damage. But Diva can't. Diva's either peeling her team or she's going in and doing damage, right? So it's I wouldn't touch Diva yet. I'd have to really think about it. I want to see Kiriko get nerfed first and then see what happens. That's what I kind of want to do. But it's tough to tell immediately right now. I'm unsure.
Mm-hmm. Fair. And then the final question: do you think devs do enough internal tests before releasing heroes? Because the Kiriko hand blocking headshots is shocking to me. Because obviously, for those who are not sure, Kiriko's like with her normal animation where she stood with her hands up blocks a lot of headshots, as well as especially as Flats has shown in his video, when looking up, just like straight up, you just can't headshot her. So I think any amount of test, like any amount, like there's no amount of internal testing that will find every bug, right? Like you
That's
do
a
need
needle
players.
in a haystack. You can't,
yeah, like you need
that
players.
just happens. That comes with the territory. You know, it is what it is. I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't believe some QA guy didn't look up his Kiriko and get headshot.
Yeah, I know. Imagine, right? Imagine not shooting at her from every single angle to check that her hand doesn't block the thing at some point. You know, like, come on.
Meanwhile, get quaked on sitting there like...
He's like, oh, can this guy wall, bounce, slam, jump, 180 turn on this character? Okay. All right, guys. Well, I have taken a lot of your time. I appreciate very much your company. I'm just going to get one quick concluding thoughts from each of you. For the rest of the season, what's going to be your kind of attitude here? You're just kind of writing it out for season 2, or are you hoping for something to come through mysteriously? Sam?
You know, I would say the game did what it needed to do in season 1. I'm a little embarrassed by the first patch and that like Genji got hit that hard and Sojourn didn't, but it's not the end of the world. I think as long as things are learned from and changed in a positive manner, we'll all forget about it. I'm excited for how is it pronounced? Ramatra?
Ramatra, I think.
Yeah, I think
Ramatra,
so. Yeah. I think you got it right.
I'm excited for that. I hope he ends up being good. I'd love to play him. A lot of people talk about the matchmaker being bad. It happens, but I still find myself having way more ability to win games than I did in Overwatch 1, so I'm happy with that. I like the direction the hero design is going in general. And I'm actually really excited for PvE, to hear more about PvE. I'm a huge Borderlands fan. I love that style of game. I love theory crafting, skill trees, and putting it all together and seeing how the cogs of all the gears turn and figuring out the best way to maximize everything. So I'm just actually more excited for that than anything else. So I'm excited to see what comes next.
AVRL?
I have a bit of a wait and see mentality. I think for me, I will withhold judgment until I see the season 2 patch and everything that comes with that. If things are not significantly better by season 2, then I'll join the bandwagon. But for now, I'm willing to sit it out and just see where we go.
Fair. Flats?
Dude, fucking, I'm waiting to. I'll watch it. The wheels fall off. I don't care. I'm having fun. As even with all the problems and all the bad things that are happening, we're in a million times better spot than we were a year ago. And I'm very, very thankful for it. I'm very, very blessed for it. And I will be, even though I'm very critical and very harsh on certain things, that doesn't mean I'm like wanting to leave, because a year ago I was going to leave. That's different. Like that means like, nah, I've been in all hope. Shit's gone. GG. Go next game. I wouldn't say I have anything like that with Overwatch at all. Like being harsh and being critical of things is kind of how Sam talked about earlier, is like wanting perfection, wanting the best, wanting it to be top of the industry, wanting to be the best game we could have and have the best experience as players that you can get anywhere. So just to like kind of put it all back in perspective is like, even if the season 2 balance patch is nothing crazy, I don't think I'm going to like go run and play some Valorant. Like I'm having a great time with it, even though I don't get to play, characters that I'm super fond of. I'm mostly playing a lot of like Sigma and like Zarya Diva before. Some Ryan if I'm lucky, and some Winston if I'm really feeling a little bit frisky that day. I'm still getting to play Overwatch. The only problem I have is the queue times. Like if the queue times were not 20 minutes, if they were like 5-6 minutes, which they have been for the last 2 days, which has been nice. I could see myself playing Overwatch like all day long for countless amounts of hours, and being able to sit down and play a game for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day consistently for months on end means that it's a goddamn good game. So Overwatch is still a goddamn good game. Just wanted to say, like, in putting in perspective, it's trying to make it better and bring it to the next level, not like, oh, you hate this game, why not just, type of deal. So
100%. Well
I'm all
said.
in.
And I concur. Like I don't remember the last time I was this dedicated and motivated to play Overwatch. Like where I'm just like I have literally never before, like for the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years that I've been streaming Overwatch, never have I ended stream and still wanting to play Overwatch afterwards. But I do now. Like I still I will end stream and I'm sometimes like, I'll go get a snack and I come back and I'm like, do you want to play another couple of games? So I think that just speaks to the testament. We didn't even talk about the matchmaker because even have a lot of frustrating with the matchmaker. I'm still loving life overall. So even if I mauled in one game, I want to GG go next. So yeah, it's a great world. So keeping it in perspective, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. And literally as well, great to be here in this call with you guys. Once more, fantastic to have your company. Please do give all these guys your love. And thank you to AVRL for joining us today as well.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you on here, buddy. The GOAT, indeed. Thank you very much, guys. Hopefully we'll have Frito back soon as well to hear from. I'm sure he's got some takes that he probably wants to rant at us about if he ever listens to this. But
he's gonna bring up hero bans. He's gonna bring it up this time. It might be Frito's time for hero bans. That's all I'm gonna say to close that one out.
I think so too. I think so. He also, I think he would have chimed in with me on the hit scan debate because I think he's feeling the hit scan oppression. But we'll see. That's for another time.
We'll see.
Thank you very much for your time, guys. Have a good rest of your day. Peace out.